Senior Apprentice Sister Yu Xian, I'm fine. At this moment, warmth appeared in Qiyu's hardened eyes. But there were also conflicting feelings behind them. Qiyu, I believe in you. You definitely wouldn't do anything like that. That Yu Xian was Qiyu's lover. As soon as she declared this, Qiyu's eyes reddened. He wasn't afraid of being harmed by others. Mountains of blades, seas of blood, he was unafraid of all of them. But he was afraid of the person closest to him not believing in him. He was touched by her words. To have such a lover, even death would be worth it. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it. So many people personally saw it, so he was the one to kill those disciples. A sinister voice rang out filled with disdain and contempt. Long Chen turned toward the source of the voice and saw a fair-skinned man standing amongst a group of disciples. He swaggered over here. This person's gaze possessed both a demonic charm and sinister air. No matter how Long Chen looked at him, the latter didn't seem to be a good person. Long Chen instantly knew who he was. As expected, as soon as he appeared, Yu Xian furiously said, Jiang Baihe, don't slander people. Qiyu never acted in such a way. He has always acted magnanimously and in an upright fashion. Everyone in the Yuhua Palace can see that. He has never bullied the weak, nor did he have any enmity with those new disciples. Why would he kill them? You'll have to ask him if you want to know why he killed them. Why are you asking me? Jiang Baihe sneered. He was extremely haughty. He then cast a glance at Long Chen and the others. When his gaze fell on Baisheshe's face, his eyes brightened. Yu Xian was truly beautiful, but compared to Baisheshe, she lost her splendor. Hence, Jiang Baihe's eyes shone brightly as he eyed Baisheshe. Shut your mouth. Jiang Baihe was about to say something to her when Long Chen directly interrupted him. He couldn't be bothered to speak with such a person. Yu Xian, let me introduce you. This is my boss, Long Chen, whom I always told you about. Qiyu's mood was good. As long as Yu Xian believed in him, then even if the heavens collapsed, he wasn't afraid. Hearing this, Yu Xian immediately bowed to Long Chen. Long Chen then appraised her. She seemed to be both kind and stubborn, the type to take a personal stance against bad people. Long Chen returned her greeting and smiled. My brother's vision really is good. The two of you are a good match. I just have one question. If the Yuhua Palace is destroyed today, will you hate him? Yu Xian was stunned and she stared in shock at Long Chen. Although Qiyu had told her that Long Chen was the strongest person in existence, looking at his cultivation base, she really couldn't believe that he was that powerful. Furthermore, Long Chen was saying such brazen words in front of everyone, including her master. So, she didn't know how to respond to it. The elder that had come with her was her master, the Vice Palace Master. He always treated her and Qiyu very well. Qiyu's primal bloodline had been awakened thanks to her pleading with her master for aid. Haha, you keep saying that you'll destroy my Yuhua Palace. As I see it, you've gone mad. I've seen this brat before. He got famous in the Heavenly Swell Domain's 9 Prefecture Convention. Have you forgotten? Does he not know that the 9 Prefecture Convention is a gathering of novices? Here in the Heavenly Star Domain, he is trash. The disciples near Jiang Baihe sneered at Long Chen. Their appearance was like they wished to trample Long Chen beneath their feet. Xiaola, have them shut their mouths. Forever, said Long Chen indifferently. Suddenly, space quivered and those disciples that had opened their mouths suddenly had their heads explode. Over 10 experts died just like that. After that, Xiaola slowly undid his hand seals, and the mark of the 3 flower pupils slowly faded. He exterminated those experts effortlessly. Xiaola had trained on the Honing Heavenly Staircase and had gone through his mother's training. He had finally become a true warrior. Also, he had fully comprehended that there was no need to have any mercy against enemies, nor did he have to have any misgivings. At this moment, the Yuhua Palace's experts were shocked and enraged. This bizarre pupil art killed people out of nowhere. It was terrifying. All those dead disciples were Jiang Baihe's followers, and they were also primals. Such powerful existences had been instantly killed, so how could the others not be afraid? Courting death. The palace master roared furiously. As he did, The terrifying might of an immortal king erupted and a palm smashed toward Long Chen and the others. Seeing this, Long Chen snorted and extended his hand. Just as he was about to summon his bone saber, an ancient voice rang out. Jiang Weizhong, with your current actions, do you feel that you are unrivaled beneath the heavens? You think that you don't need to place anyone else in your eyes, huh? Ancestral Patriarch. When they heard that voice, the senior members of the Yuhua Palace cried out in shock. They recognized this voice. This Patriarch had not appeared in thousands of years, and they hadn't expected this matter to disturb him. Patriarch, this group of people goes too far. There's someone pretending to be the dean of the High Firmament Academy, and they even killed disciples of the Yuhua Palace. They must be executed for their sins, declared the palace master. Suddenly, a stooped elder appeared in front of everyone. He was an exceedingly old person. His snow-white eyebrows drooped down all the way to his chest, and the wrinkles on his face were so deep that they looked like bark. However, his eyes were exceedingly deep. He was old but not decrepit, giving others an unfathomable feeling. With his arrival, everyone from the Yuhua Palace, including the palace master, hastily knelt on the ground. Greetings, Patriarch. This elder ignored their actions. He only looked toward Long Chen and smiled. Is the noble sweeper of the academy still doing well? His body is still healthy, and he's still sweeping the ground every day. He is well, said Long Chen. He was surprised by this elder. He hadn't expected the Yuhua Palace to have such an existence. His aura could not be judged, and he was a monster that should be called a living fossil. This was something that Long Chen hadn't factored into his calculations. However, based on his tone, this elder seemed to know the sweeping elder. Even so, as Long Chen wasn't sure what this elder's plan was, he said, Senior, this junior came today not to cause trouble, but to obtain justice for my brother. I have the seal right here. I truly am the dean of the High Firmament Academy's 7th branch. Senior can take a look. You naturally aren't a fake. It was my Yuhua Palace that lacked manners. This isn't the place to talk. Why don't we go chat in the palace? The Patriarch's tone was very polite. Then I'll disturb you. Just like that, Long Chen followed the Patriarch toward the main palace. As for the palace master, his expression was rather ugly, but he could only follow as well. Once they were in the palace and everyone was seated, Long Chen got straight to the point. Senior, I wish to know, according to the rules of your noble palace, what is the punishment for killing members of the same sect? Long Chen was very direct, so he directly tossed out such a question. He had come to resolve a problem, not to play games. The courteous words ended here. This is an internal matter of the Yuhua Palace. We will naturally handle our matters justly. We don't need an outsider like you to interfere, snorted the palace master. How laughable. If you really were capable of handling this impartially, would I, Long Chen, be forced to cross the Devil's Sea just to waste words on you? The Yuhua Palace can count as a famous, righteous sect. That is the only reason I came to talk reason with you, hoping that I could resolve this peacefully. I don't know if it's because you think I'm young, but you took me for a fool. Let me say something rude here. I've killed more life forms than you've ever seen in your lifetime. Lord Brahma and Puta, none of them were able to topple me. Do you think that you can scare me? You're too naive, sneered Long Chen, not giving this palace master any face. Long Chen was holding back a belly full of fire due to Qiyu's matter. He didn't want to be too rigid with the way he handled this thing, but the palace master was truly forcing Long Chen with his unreasonable actions. He actually wanted to kill them for their treasures? If that patriarch had not appeared, Long Chen would have turned this place into a sea of blood. What big words! You dare to come to my Yuhua Palace with such impudence? If you're so confident, then do you dare to fight me? Said Jiang Baihe sinisterly. He was claimed to be a genius that came only once every 10,000 years, so he was extremely arrogant. Seeing someone who was even more arrogant than him, he was enraged. Shut up. You don't know how to properly behave, shouted the patriarch. He thumped his cane on the ground, causing the entire palace to shudder. As a result, the palace master and Jiang Baihe instantly shut their mouths. Only then did the patriarch turn to Long Chen and amicably say, Great Dean, this old man has not properly raised my children, letting you see such jokes. I've been in seclusion all this time, so I'm not clear on this matter. But I can see that Qiyu is an upright and good child. His eyes are clear. There are definitely some fishy things when it comes to this matter. I will personally investigate it and find the cause of it to clear this child of all crimes. The Patriarch then turned to Qiyu and smiled kindly. Child, your talent isn't bad. But your strongest point is your determination. Your willpower is the strongest of all the disciples. Don't worry, I will get justice for you. Furthermore, starting today, no one will dare to make things difficult for you in the Yuhua Palace. Upon hearing this, Jiang Baihe's expression grew extremely ugly. A vein throbbed on his forehead, and killing intent flowed within his eyes. The Patriarch was actually willing to stand up for Qiyu just because of these youngsters. He was enraged, unable to understand what this Patriarch was thinking. Had he grown muddled with age? How was he such a coward that was biased toward these outsiders? Why was he protecting Qiyu so much, while abandoning him, a peerless heavenly genius? As for Long Chen, he somehow had a bad feeling. This old man was trying to smooth things over. Seeing the Patriarch treat him like this, Qiyu was overjoyed. He hastily bowed. Thank you for your kindness. I will listen to the Patriarch's instructions. The Patriarch laughed. Good child, what magnanimity. You are a real man. Yu Xian, your vision isn't bad. Yu Xian was also beaming after hearing the Patriarch praise Qiyu. Furthermore, the Patriarch was going to stand up for him. In the future, he didn't need to fear Jiang Baihe. With just a few words, this crafty old man had completely placated Qiyu. Long Chen felt like his punch had landed on cotton. Qiyu had said that he would listen to the Patriarch's instructions. If Long Chen started making demands now, it would appear all too overbearing. Having already said this, there was no way Long Chen could force it. It seemed that Qiyu was still too inexperienced. Long Chen said, Senior's noble character and integrity are truly admirable. Then this is precisely the result that everyone wants. However, on the way here, I asked Qiyu what kind of result he wants, and he told me he doesn't want anything else other than to fight the people who participated in the attack against him. Due to their use of poison at the time, he could only watch as those new disciples were slaughtered in front of him, unable to protect them. The guilt from that incident made him swear to kill all those murderers. Most despicable of all, those people actually placed the blame on Qiyu. Such maliciousness truly makes the heart cold. As his boss, I naturally must help him achieve his heart's desire. There are some things that can simply come to a tacit understanding, but some things cannot be left ambiguous. I won't bother doing a soul search on that Luzia, but all those people who attacked my brother that day must give an explanation. I won't bully you. Last time, they used despicable poison, but this time, we can have a fair battle. Qiyu can still be one person. They had 16 people, but Luzia is crippled, so have the 15 of them come out. 1 against 15, a life and death match until one side is exterminated. After this battle, no matter who wins or loses, this matter can end. Hearing Long Chen's words, Yu Xian was shocked. Long Chen wanted Qiyu to fight 15 primals at once. It had to be known that just now, Qiyu had sent her spiritual messages to explain what had happened. Yu Xian was now aware that Qiyu's attackers were all Jiang Baihe's capable subordinates. None of them was weaker than Qiyu. The only reason he had managed to survive was because they all felt that he was definitely dead, so they didn't want to get dragged down with him. Thus, they held back, giving Qiyu a chance to escape. Now Long Chen wanted him to fight against 15 of them at once? Was that not sending Qiyu to his death? She couldn't believe her ears. Qiyu was patting her back comfortingly. In the past few days, he had exchanged pointers with Qinglong. He had also gone up the honing heavenly staircase and had completely transformed. He was confident. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the Yuhua Palace's experts changed. They turned toward Jiang Baihe with some disbelief. Jiang Baihe liked Yu Xian and hated Qiyu. This was something that everyone in the Yuhua Palace was aware of. But for him to use such despicable means against Qiyu was truly contemptible. The Yuhua Palace was a righteous power, so for such a thing to occur was an immense humiliation. If such a thing was spread, how would the Yuhua Palace's disciples have the face to see others? They also thought of how the palace master had protected Jiang Baihe. So, he actually wanted to kill the victim? They didn't know about any of this. Chen had explained this matter clearly. Actually, he was blackmailing them. If they wanted to keep this matter secret, fine. But the precondition was to hand over the attackers. As long as they listened, he wouldn't be too hard on them. All those who attacked Qiyu that day, stand up. The Patriarch had no choice but to helplessly open his mouth once more. When the Patriarch opened his mouth, 15 disciples walked out from Jiang Baihe's side. Those disciples all had cold and tough expressions as they looked at Qiyu. Last time, they had been ordered to eliminate him. They weren't even planning on using poison at first, as that would damage their reputation. Although this matter had to be kept secret, they were primals and didn't wish to use such methods. However, Jiang Baihe had ordered them to, as he would not permit any failure. He wanted to secretly eliminate Qiyu at all costs. That was why he had bought off one of the new disciples under Qiyu's lead to poison him. After poisoning him, all those people were killed. It was an easy cover-up. However, after being poisoned and surrounded, Qiyu suddenly managed to grab a spirit beast and flee. Jiang Baihe was infuriated with them for this failure. He was just a little bit off from killing them. But as they were unable to even accomplish such a small matter, they themselves were also angry. Now that Chen had brought Qiyu back and was challenging them to a 1-against-15 fight against Qiyu, they felt that he was sending Qiyu to his death. The martial stage was activated and the 15 of them directly entered. At this moment, Yuxian held Qiyu's hand nervously. She didn't want him to go as she was afraid. "Don't worry. Believe in me." Qiyu patted her hand and then walked up to the stage. Qinglong said, "Brother, boss is here. Bring out the might of the Dragonblood Legion. Whether or not you are in the Dragonblood Legion, you are a Dragonblood warrior." Qiyu suddenly turned back and looked at Chen. After he clenched his right fist and struck his chest hard, he smiled confidently. Qiyu stepped onto the martial stage. Its divine light covered them in a barrier, isolating them from the rest of the world. Somehow the barrier possessed a heavy aura. It was said that this barrier was something that even immortal kings would have difficulty breaking. Seeing Yuxian extremely nervous, Chen was quietly happy for Qiyu. True love endured hardship. Qiyu could also be said to be blessed. Let the competition begin. An elder of the Yuhua Palace announced the start of the battle. The 15 primals immediately pounced at Qiyu, launching their sharpest killing blows. Boom! 15 weapons whistled toward Qiyu, crashing into his sword. However, with a single sword, he blocked all their attacks, and the result was that both sides were sent flying. That caused startled cries to ring out. Qiyu's realm was the lowest of the fighters. But on his own, he had blocked the attacks of 15 people. How did he do this? Chen nodded after seeing that. Perhaps the position of the most foolish people in the Dragonblood Legion could only belong to himself and Wild. In just a few days, Qiyu had started to understand how to use heavenly Dao energy. Chen had climbed up the honing heavenly staircase an unknown number of times but had still been too foolish to comprehend this power. If it hadn't been for Luo Zichuan, he probably wouldn't have learned how to control heavenly Dao energy in his entire lifetime. However, Wild was truly foolish, while Chen was only this foolish because the heavenly Daos were biased against him, so he hadn't ever tried to grasp that feeling. Qiyu's technique borrowed the power of heaven and earth, otherwise, there would have been no way for him to block all 15 of their attacks. Of all the experts present, only the palace master and the Patriarch realized this. The power of heaven and earth was normally something only divine lords could start to get a grasp over. Those who could truly control heavenly Dao energy had to be immortal kings. Qiyu had only left the Yuhua Palace for a few days but was already starting to control the power of heaven and earth. Hence, even the two of them were shocked. Although it was only in embryonic form, he had taken this step in advance of all other four-peak experts. This one step allowed him to stand out within the four-peak realm. Kill! Qiyu suddenly stamped on the air. The void shuddered, and he shot out like a meteor toward the 15 of them who had yet to stabilize. The 15 of them had thought that their combined attack would definitely kill Qiyu or at the very least leave him seriously wounded. They hadn't expected to end up in a draw, and they hadn't discussed how to cooperate any further than that. Boom. Qiyu arrived in front of one of those experts and slashed at his head. Seeing that he couldn't dodge and that the people around him couldn't help, he stabbed his spear toward Qiyu's chest. The sword was shorter than the spear. Although he attacked second, just as Qiyu's sword struck his neck, his spear would definitely pierce Qiyu's chest. This was a trade, one life for a life, forcing the opponent to change moves if they didn't want to die. However, just as he stabbed his spear forward, his expression changed. He was shocked to find that Qiyu's sword contained all his power. There was no room for changing techniques. In other words, in order to kill him, Qiyu no longer wanted his life. That disciple hastily pulled back his spear to block. He didn't want to die. As a result, the hesitation resulted in him pulling back his spear slowly, and Qiyu cut him in two. Blood then dyed the martial stage. Startled cries rang out. Qiyu was truly tough, to the point of craziness. This was entirely relying on risking his life without other techniques. It was a competition of whose guts were bigger. After killing that disciple, Qiyu shot off to the left. Two swords cut the back of his robes, and blood soaked his upper back. At the same time as he dodged, his sword swung through an odd angle. Two more heads soared into the sky. Using the smallest price, Qiyu exchanged an injury for 2 lives. Normally, for peak experts could survive for a while even after having their heads cut off, but Qiyu's sword contained the power of the heavenly Daos. At the same time as his sword cut off their heads, it also shattered their souls. 3 disciples were killed in an instant. Qiyu was like a fiend who killed without batting an eye, an existence that had been released from hell. That chilling killing intent of his shook people's souls. The others instantly grew afraid. Even while Qiyu was injured, they didn't take advantage of that to attack. Instead, they chose to retreat, waiting for an even better opportunity. As a result, that became a fatal mistake. As soon as they retreated, their formations scattered. Hence, Qinglong shook his head and indifferently declared, "It's over." As if cooperating with his words, Qiyu moved like lightning, hunting down those remaining disciples. With every swing of his sword, he reaped one of their lives. In just a moment, 5 more of them fell and only 7 remained. Qiyu was also covered in blood, but his eyes were icy. They didn't contain the slightest emotion as he continued to kill. "Junior apprentice brother Qiyu, don't kill me. We had no choice in the matter. It was senior apprentice brother Baihe who forced us. If you want revenge, kill the person responsible. Let us go dash." One of those disciples actually knelt on the ground and wept, only to be mercilessly killed by a stroke of Qiyu's sword. "Stop!" Finally, Jiang Baihe was no longer able to continue watching. He furiously roared. These people were his important subordinates. If you wanted to beat a dog, you had to look at its master first. But now, these dogs were actually selling him out due to their fear. He could no longer keep watching. He saw that his subordinates had been mentally crushed. It was fear that was in control of them now. Having lost the courage to fight, all of them would be killed if this continued. The moment Qiyu managed to receive their combined attacks, their defeat was decided. After that, Qiyu killed them one by one, and they were unable to unleash a combination attack again. "Junior apprentice brother Qiyu, no, Grandpa Qiyu. I was only listening to orders. I'm willing to be your ox, be your horse." Jiang Baihe's roar was unable to get into the martial stage. But the voices inside the martial stage were clearly transmitted out. At this time, these people no longer cared about dignity. They only wished to keep their lives. They were begging as they fled. However, from the start, Qiyu's expression was cold, and he continued to kill them one by one. The final disciple despaired and actually charged at Qiyu. Boom. In his despair, he actually self-detonated. Regretfully, other than forcing Qiyu back, he didn't cause any injuries. After the martial stage's runes slowly faded, Qiyu walked off, leaving behind a ground littered with corpses. It was an astonishing sight. It had to be known that those were not ordinary disciples. They were primals, the future pillars of the Yuhua palace. They had been slain just like that. After a moment of shock, the Yuhua Palace's senior experts realized the implications of this, and their expressions grew exceedingly ugly. This was a huge blow to the Yuhua Palace. Patriarch, although these disciples acted wrongly, those sins weren't worthy of the death penalty. Don't you think having them killed like this is too far? Can it be that our great Yuhua Palace is simply going to be threatened by others? Qiyu's life is important, but are everyone else's lives worthless? Asked an elder, bowing at the same time. He was extremely angry. This person's position in the Yuhua Palace seemed to be quite high. There were quite a few people who agreed with him, thinking that Long Chen's group had gone too far. Seeing this, the Patriarch started to get a bad feeling. But before he could say anything, Long Chen directly said, "Senior is correct." Truly well said. All lives are equal. So tell me, since everyone is equal, why was it that Qiyu's life could be taken from him by others? What about the hundreds of new disciples that Qiyu brought out hunting and were killed? Hundreds of lives were lost, all due to Jiang Baihe. Since all lives are equal, naturally justice must be obtained for those innocent disciples that died so regretfully. It's not as if Jiang Baihe's life is important, but everyone else's life is worthless. It could be said that Long Chen had managed to grasp the opening in the elder's words and sharply pierce through it. Before this, the Patriarch had managed to mediate and gloss over this, while Qiyu was too naive and really fell for it. If that had happened, Long Chen would have had no choice but to let things go after Qiyu killed his attackers. Even so, Long Chen didn't want to let Jiang Baihe off. However, the Yuhua Palace was the place that had raised Qiyu in the immortal world. Long Chen didn't want Qiyu to carry the burden of destroying his own sect. Thus, after killing these people, as long as the Patriarch could guarantee that Jiang Baihe would no longer target Qiyu, this matter would be settled. Even though Long Chen didn't like that result, he could only accept it. However, this elder's angry words had given Long Chen the opening that he wanted. By criticizing Qiyu as a ruthless murderer and Long Chen for threatening them, Long Chen was given the chance to point to the source of this conflict, Jiang Baihe. It had to be known that he was the true ringleader. If they disagreed with how things were carried out, then fine, Long Chen also disagreed with how things were carried out. You wanted to cause more trouble? Fine, then there would be more trouble. That elder was made speechless by Long Chen's words. He wanted to say that those new disciples couldn't compare to these future pillars of the sect, but his previous words would turn that into a slap to his own face. All those criticizers were left flabbergasted. They had no way to retort. At this moment, the Patriarch's expression grew even uglier. He cursed these fools. This matter had originally been settled by him, but they had to cause more trouble. Even he no longer knew how to suppress this matter now. Damnable ants, you've grown tired of living, huh? You want revenge? Fine, I'll give you a chance. Long Chen, come out. I'll give you a chance to fight fairly. Jiang Baihe was infuriated and was no longer able to hold back. He directly challenged him to a battle. Absolutely not, shouted the Patriarch. Patriarch, it seems that there's no stopping this. The other side has come right to our door to bully us. If we continue to submit, the reputation of the Yuhua Palace that has been built over hundreds of thousands of years would be destroyed overnight. How would we face our ancestors? The palace master also couldn't hold back any longer. Although this Patriarch's seniority was immeasurably higher than his, he was the current palace master. He had the authority to decide this matter. Also, he had absolute confidence in Jiang Baihe. That was because within the entire Yuhua Palace, he was the only one who knew just how powerful Jiang Baihe was. When Jiang Baihe was just born, he already caught the palace master's eye. Then the latter raised him up himself. Behind his growth was an unknown amount of blood, sweat, and tears. Although Jiang Baihe was arrogant, he had the power to be so. In his eyes, as long as someone had power, any flaws were unimportant. Thus, the palace master was in full support of Long Chen's battle against Jiang Baihe. He bitterly hated Long Chen and wanted to crush him. The way that Long Chen had repeatedly said that he would destroy the Yuhua Palace drove him mad. To say that he would destroy the sect right in front of the palace master's face was no different than slapping his face. Fool, when two tigers fight, there will definitely be casualties. My Yuhua Palace has previously received the favor of the High Firmament Academy. It is unacceptable that you wish to harm the relationship between our two sections. Jiang Weizhong, do you dare to not listen to my words now that you've grown up? The Patriarch furiously stood up. Within the Yuhua Palace, quite a few experts were in support of Jiang Baihe and this challenge. They all hoped for Jiang Baihe to slay Long Chen to win back the face of the Yuhua Palace. However, the Patriarch's fury made them quiver. Although Jiang Weizhong was the palace master, in the end, all major decisions required the Patriarch's approval. Long Chen was surprised. The Yuhua Palace had a relationship with the High Firmament Academy? However, after a moment of thinking, he realized that this connection was nothing more than an excuse. The Patriarch simply didn't want him to fight Jiang Baihe. Long Chen sighed inside. This old fellow really wasn't ordinary. He seemed to know what Long Chen was thinking and was very apprehensive of him. Today, between Long Chen and myself, only one can live to see tomorrow's sun. No one can stop it. Long Chen, if you were raised by a father and mother, come out and fight, roared Jiang Baihe. Upon hearing this, Long Chen's calm expression instantly sharpened, his killing intent igniting. The entire palace felt like it had been dropped into an icehouse. That bone-chilling killing intent invaded even their souls, making them quiver. All right, as you wish. Long Chen spat out his response. Long Chen's response pleased Jiang Baihe. But the Patriarch's expression grew exceedingly ugly. Things had progressed to this point, so all his previous efforts were for nothing. Seeing Jiang Weizhong's expression as if victory was in his grasp, the Patriarch was ashen with rage. No one could change Jiang Baihe's haughty arrogance. The Patriarch knew that he had been spoiled rotten. From his childhood, he had always had Jiang Weizhong supporting him. If the Patriarch used his status to forcibly stop this, Jiang Baihe would definitely refuse. He might very likely abandon his status as a disciple of the Yuhua Palace just to fight Long Chen. The Patriarch could only sigh and stop trying to fight it. Seeing that the Patriarch was silent, Jiang Baihe said, "Come, Long Chen. Show me what abilities the dual champion of the 9 Prefecture Convention has. I'll show you that you are nothing more than a frog at the bottom of a well. In front of me, you being champion is nothing more than a huge joke." Long Chen coldly looked at him. "As you wish. Activate the martial stage." Activate the martial stage? This martial stage is unable to endure my power. Let's fight outside the palace. Jiang Baihe laughed arrogantly and flew out of the palace just like that. His speed left people smacking their lips. Long Chen snorted and also shot off. After that, Bai Shishir, Bai Xiaole, Qiyu, Qin Feng, and Su Zixiong followed. When the palace master rose, the Patriarch sighed. "Weizhong, your foolishness has finally resulted in the death of your great-grandson." Jiang Weizhong shook his head. "Patriarch, you've been in seclusion for too long, and you don't know what's been happening in the outside world. Jiang Baihe's power is not to be underestimated. You'll definitely be surprised by him. It would not be an exaggeration to say that with his power, he can sweep through the heavenly star domain's junior generation." Jiang Weizhong had absolute confidence in Jiang Baihe's power. He didn't think that anyone in the same realm could defeat this great-grandson of his. Moreover, he thought that the Patriarch was already so old. As people got older, their guts got smaller. It was no longer his era. "Today, I'll show everyone just how terrifying Baihe is. Just wait and see." Jiang Weizhong laughed and walked out. The elders of the Yuhua Palace were shaken inside. Jiang Weizhong no longer seemed to have much respect for the Patriarch. He actually dared to leave on his own? That was disrespectful. However, many elders bowed to the Patriarch and left as well. These elders could see that the palace master seemed to be dissatisfied with the Patriarch's conservative methods. The two of them were starting to conflict. Only a few dozen elders remained. They were mostly the older ones, and in the same vein as the others, they were dissatisfied as well, but not with the Patriarch. The palace master was also ignoring them. Yuxian and her master, the vice palace master, stayed behind. Yuxian then looked at the Patriarch's furious expression and knelt on the ground. With a sob, she said, "Patriarch, it was my fault. I was the cause of all of this." Hearing this, the Patriarch recovered from his rage and shook his head. He walked over to her and lifted her up. "Good child. Although your talent isn't as good as Jiang Baihe's, your heart is pure. You are blessed with good fortune. In the future, I'll probably be depending on you to be the pillar of the Yuhua Palace." When the Patriarch said this, all the remaining experts' expressions changed. How could he say such a thing? Patriarch Yu Xian's first thought was that the Patriarch had gotten muddled with rage. The Patriarch waved his hand. "Let's go. We have to watch. Sai, having big guts is good, but without care, these guts will cause a disaster. This matter is my fault." The outside of the Yuhua Palace was filled with mountain ranges spreading beyond the horizon. This was all the territory of the Yuhua Palace and also the hunting grounds of its disciples. Long Chen and Jiang Baihe stopped in a mountain valley. Bai Shishir and the others were watching from not too far away. Behind Jiang Baihe were countless experts of the Yuhua Palace, and Jiang Weizhong was amongst them. When the Patriarch appeared, it caused even further chaos. The Patriarch was actually standing beside Jiang Weizhong. When he stood there, Jiang Weizhong maintained a polite expression, but there was a disdainful expression in his eyes. Clearly, he had won this round. The Patriarch had no choice but to lower his head to him. "Weizhong, do you remember when you were 7 and joined the Yuhua Palace?" asked the Patriarch suddenly. "Yes, Patriarch." Jiang Weizhong nodded. He looked at the Patriarch, not knowing what he was trying to say. However, seeing his flat expression, Jiang Weizhong felt refreshed. It seemed that after this competition, the Patriarch was planning on conceding to him. In the future, the Patriarch would no longer disturb his matters. The Patriarch continued, "I remember that up until you were 15, there was no sign of your bloodline awakening. You were always bullied by others. There were several times when others almost killed you. Later on, your bloodline awakened and you soared. Anyone who had targeted you before was killed. At 97, you became an immortal king. You were the 7th genius of the Yuhua Palace who managed to become an immortal king before 100. You went through a grand journey throughout the heavenly star domain. Eventually, you challenged wild Saber Luo Zichuan. However, you were defeated by a single blow of his saber, and your soul was badly wounded. It took 400 years for you to recuperate." Jiang Weizhong's expression sank. He coldly said, "That was my carelessness. Luo Zichuan was also despicable. He simply attacked without saying anything." When Jiang Weizhong ascended to the Immortal King realm, he saw a boundless future before him. As a result, he challenged Luo Zichuan. However, Luo Zichuan ignored him until he destroyed one of the towers by the Luo family's gates. In his fury, Luo Zichuan almost killed Jiang Weizhong with a single blow. If it hadn't been for a protective divine item protecting him as he fled, he would have lost his life. After returning to the Yuhua Palace, Jiang Weizhong tucked his tail between his legs and quietly healed. He no longer dared to go out and mess around. That battle had turned him into a laughingstock, one of Luo Zichuan's stepping stones to fame. That was his life's greatest humiliation. Hence, when the Patriarch brought this up in front of so many people, he was enraged. The Patriarch calmly continued, "Winning and losing is common among warriors. When you unsheathe your sword, you must be ready to resheathe it as well. Only someone who understands how to retreat will understand how to go on the offense. After that battle, I found that you had reserved yourself and felt that you had matured. Thus, I recommended you to be promoted to the position of Palace Master. But I didn't expect history to repeat itself again. You didn't pass on your bloody lesson to your great-grandson. He is just as arrogant as you were back then, and just like you from back then, he lacks any respect. Even the path he is walking is the exact same. Could it be that this identical story was fated? You lost to Luo Zichuan back then. Do you know that just before this, Long Chen received Luo Zichuan's guidance? He just destroyed the Chu family." Jiang Weizhong's expression changed. He rarely bothered with things outside of the heavenly star domain, so he had no idea about Long Chen's relationship with the Luo family. But he quickly sneered, "You mean that Long Chen is Luo Zichuan's apprentice? Then that's excellent. Once Jiang Baihe kills Long Chen, he will avenge the humiliation of that saber blow from back then. Child, you are still too immature. The Patriarch sighed. Just then, Jiang Baihe's entire body began to shine brightly. His blood qi raged and he entered his combat state. It's begun! Everyone instantly tensed up. As Jiang Baihe's blood qi was fully unleashed, his divine might raged and the roar of a fierce tiger could be heard from his manifestation. His blood qi covered the very heavens. Even from a great distance, people could feel his terrifying bloodline pressure. Whistling winds unfurled, slicing through the air like blades. The ground beneath his feet began to disintegrate, and countless boulders were sent rolling. Even those familiar with Jiang Baihe were stunned by this scene. They hadn't expected that Jiang Baihe had been holding back his true power. It was only revealed now. Just this bloodline pressure was enough to crush divine lords. His bloodline power was so strong that it had formed a kind of domain. So powerful! This bloodline pressure is irresistible, exclaimed one of the late-stage divine lord elders of the Yuhua palace. Even as a late-stage divine lord, he felt suppressed by this bloodline pressure. Under this pressure, it was very difficult for him to unleash his true power. If he was fighting Jiang Baihe, he would have to flee. Seeing that a late-stage divine lord would give such an assessment of Jiang Baihe, the disciples all stared at him with both fear and admiration. Patriarch, do you see? Baihe's bloodline is so pure that even late-stage primal divine lords will be suppressed. Under this pressure, he can kill them easily. Even I would need to unleash my full power just to guarantee my victory. Would such a genius fear Long Chen? Said Jiang Weizhong confidently as he watched Jiang Baihe arrogantly unleashing his bloodline power. Jiang Weizhong sneered disdainfully. That wasn't just a sneer toward Long Chen but also the Patriarch. Jiang Weizhong thought that the Patriarch had grown old and his vision was clouded. However, he was surprised when the Patriarch shook his head. Do you know why I was disturbed out of seclusion? Jiang Weizhong didn't know how to reply, as he didn't know the answer. He thought that the Patriarch was secretly keeping track of what was happening in the Yuhua palace. He didn't know that the Patriarch was actually deep in seclusion. Just as you were about to attack Long Chen, the Yuhua palace's karmic luck divine pillar started changing color. It was on the verge of cracking, said the Patriarch. How can that be? Jiang Weizhong and all the other elders of the Yuhua palace were shocked. The karmic luck divine pillar was the foundation on which the Yuhua palace was built. It was a priceless spiritual treasure, one that possessed the miraculous ability to anticipate the future of the Sect's karmic luck. When it gave off a warning, it meant that something that could threaten the Yuhua palace was approaching. For it to change color meant that the Yuhua palace was in danger of being destroyed. How could I, the palace master, really bother killing some juniors? Raged Jiang Weizhong. After acting wrongly, you don't dare to admit it. You even come up with excuses to cover it up. That only shows that other than being foolish, you are also a hypocrite with an inferiority complex. Other than everything else you did, the most foolish thing was personally causing your great-grandson, a genius that only appeared once in thousands of years of your Jiang family, to die, said the Patriarch coldly. Bullshit. Jiang Baihe definitely can kill that brat. You've grown muddled with age, and your mind has decayed. You are no longer suited to take charge of the Yuhua palace. Roared Jiang Weizhong. This roar caused everyone to jump, and all their expressions grew ugly. Jiang Weizhong actually dared to curse the Patriarch. That was on the same line as killing a master or destroying a sect. It was a grave taboo of the immortal world. Palace Master, you've gone too far. The Patriarch's analysis is correct. For you to curse him for the truth, are you not afraid of being laughed at by others? Demanded Yu Xian angrily. Jiang Weizhong didn't have any filter over his mouth. For him to have said such disgraceful words, even he was regretful. But having said it, he couldn't take it back. Jiang Weizhong thickened his face and said, Disciple was wrong to say that. I've offended the Patriarch, so I apologize to you in front of everyone. When we're done here, I will kowtow to you in apology. However, I firmly disagree with your viewpoint. If Baihe loses, I will abdicate the position of Palace Master. However, if Baihe wins, it means that I was right. If so, I hope that you don't interfere in my decisions in the future. The Patriarch looked at Jiang Weizhong, not at all angry. Instead, he simply sighed. Let us let the facts speak then. Everyone turned back to the battlefield. Jiang Baihe's bloodline pressure was still rising, and yet Long Chen did not react. He just calmly watched him. Have you seen the difference and are despairing? Asked Jiang Baihe with a disdainful smile. Are you done? In order to let you die fully convinced of your defeat, I've been waiting a long time, said Long Chen indifferently. A bone saber then appeared in his hand. After that, Long Chen swung his saber. A perfect arc appeared in the air before the saber rested on his shoulder. That arc was a crack in the void, and it didn't heal for a long time. When they saw that, everyone's expression changed. What kind of divine weapon is that? Long Chen had only lightly swung his saber through the air, but it cut apart the void. Hence, everyone was shocked. They had never seen such a terrifying divine weapon before. This blade appeared in front of others for the first time, and its sharpness made countless experts quiver. I didn't expect you to have so many treasures on your body. Good, then they'll all belong to me after today. Jiang Baihe's eyes lit up. He was clearly attracted to Long Chen's saber. A divine weapon that was like fine jade was naturally attractive. Greed is one of the original sins. Jiang Weizhong almost caused the destruction of the Yuhua palace because of greed. On the other hand, your patriarch worked so hard, even willingly lowering himself to talk on the same level as me, a four-peak disciple, just to protect all of you. Your patriarch managed to drag you back from the gates of hell, but you just had to charge your way there. It seems that you don't know. The first time that I saw you, I saw the darkness and evil in your heart. There is something very loathsome within your soul. The moment I saw you, I wanted to kill you. But in order to not cause trouble for my brother, I was able to endure and let you live. Regretfully, you never thought to let others live. It is precisely this desire of yours that caused you to step onto the path of no return. When Long Chen's words entered the Patriarch's ears, he sighed once more. The other experts of the Yuhua Palace looked at him in shock. Could it be that everything really was as the Patriarch said? You're far too arrogant. Do you know just how naive you are? Jiang Baihe sneered furiously. In the middle of his sneer, Long Chen's figure vanished, appearing in front of him. He then slapped Jiang Baihe in the face. As a result, a clear and crisp sound rang out. Jiang Baihe didn't even have a chance to react. He was slapped flying. Jiang Baihe then smashed through multiple mountains, reaching all the way to the end of people's vision. Long Chen had his saber in his right hand, and his left hand was still in the slapping posture. He simply stood there as if he had done something incredibly minuscule. As for the Yuhua Palace's experts, their hearts clenched. They could only hear the sound of their heartbeats in their ears. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. I really dislike your way of showing off. I don't even know where you get that confidence from. I'm giving you a chance to recover. Otherwise, you would already be dead beneath my saber, said Long Chen coldly. Boss really is the boss. This face-slapping art is still as divine as ever in the immortal world. No one can block it, said Qiyu. His blood heated up just from witnessing this. That old feeling he had been missing finally resurfaced within his heart, igniting his own battle intent. Boom! As the earth exploded, a giant gate appeared and an enormous figure charged out of it. This was a giant ape with golden eyes and golden fur. Its wild aura radiated throughout the world, shaking heaven and earth. This was a fifth-rank beast. But it was no ordinary beast. It was a psychic beast from another world. Psychic beasts were capable of being summoned through a spiritual contract. That contract opened the path to the other world for them, allowing them to come out into this world and assist someone in battle. The Chu family's altars had also been set up for a similar contract but for life forms of the netherworld. Unfortunately, their contract was a one-shot deal. The life forms would accept their offerings and do some work for them, and once that work was done, the two sides would have nothing to do with each other. However, spirit psychic bloodline arts were for long-term usage. It was just that such bloodlines were exceedingly rare in this world. Furthermore, even if you possessed such a bloodline, you still needed to go to that other world and capture psychic beasts for yourself, forcing them to form contracts. If you wanted a psychic beast that was even stronger than you could only use some sinister schemes to subdue it and trick it into forming a contract. This golden ape's terrifying pressure shocked countless experts. They had seen Jiang Baihe summon other psychic beasts, but they had all been of the 4th rank. However, those 4th rank beasts of his were all very terrifying. Some were even comparable to immortal kings. Today, he had summoned a 5th rank psychic beast, something that was not just comparable to an immortal king but could equally match an immortal king's power. This golden ape is something that even I would have to use my full power to fight. Tell me, how is Long Chen going to fight it? Jiang Weizhong was pleased with this change. He eyed the Patriarch, but he was disappointed to see that the Patriarch didn't react to this shocking golden ape at all. At this moment, the golden ape roared. Just the sound shattered the nearby mountains. Countless people were struck by that sound wave, and blood poured out of their ears. They temporarily lost their hearing and felt the world shaking. Man and beast unite. After that, Jiang Baihe appeared on top of the giant ape's head. He formed hand seals, and just like a rune, he left himself branded on its forehead. A golden scepter then appeared in the ape's hand. It was so big that when it lifted the scepter, it was like even the heavens would be pierced through. With a furious roar, the scepter smashed down from the heavens. Every expert felt their heart shaking. Although this attack wasn't targeting them, the terrifying pressure had crushed their mental strength. Bai Shirshi's expression also changed. She hadn't expected Jiang Baihe to be so terrifying. Compared to him, Ku Weia and Gu Yun were practically trash. Die! The golden ape actually spat out the human language. In this merger state, everything was controlled by Jiang Baihe. Seeing this scene, Long Chen smiled coldly. He slowly raised his bone saber in front of him and patiently awaited the scepter's fall. In front of countless shocked gazes, that giant scepter smashed down like a heavenly pillar crushing an ant. Long Chen appeared absolutely minuscule in front of it. Boom! As a result, chi waves exploded and fragments of space-time blew through the air. All the experts present, even divine lords, almost coughed up blood from the impact. Dust and rubble flew through the air. However, they were shocked to find that under the giant scepter, Long Chen had not budged. His bone blade was stopping the scepter just like that, and his face was as expressionless as ever. An arc of light had appeared on top of his bone saber, and people could see another arc from the scepter as well. Those two arcs then rubbed against each other, emitting explosive sounds that hurt people's souls. It felt like their souls would be torn apart by that sound. I understand. It seems that you don't know your own power. All right then, I'll help you force it out. Long Chen suddenly became covered by dragon scales and golden light erupted. A dragon cry then resounded through the air. Boom. The giant golden ape was sent reeling back. What? The Yuhua Palace's experts were stunned. That golden ape was a 5th-rank psychic beast, equivalent to an immortal king. Ignoring its shocking blood chi, just its giant body and shape were enough to tell people that it was an existence specializing in brute power. However, even something this terrifying was knocked back by Long Chen. At this moment, golden dragon scales appeared all over Long Chen's body. Flames ignited on top of them as if the scales themselves were burning. Right now, Long Chen appeared to be a golden warrior burning with divine flames. Furthermore, the current Long Chen was different from before. When he activated the power of his divine flames, he managed to absorb a bit of heavenly Dao energy to assist him in battle. The majority of the heavenly Daos were against Long Chen, and only a small portion could be summoned to assist him. But this small amount was enough to make Long Chen feel as if he had been freed from a heavy set of shackles. Only now did he realize just how heavy those shackles were. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough. In the Four-Peak realm, he would slowly break free from those shackles dragging him down. Although his cultivation base was only at the first heaven stage of the Four-Peak realm, He could already feel a portion of the heavenly Daos assisting him. The seals that this world had on him had weakened. He was experiencing what Luo Zichuan had taught him. Only by learning how to borrow the power of the heavenly Daos could he understand more about the heavenly Daos, and only then could he swim freely within this vast ocean. Long Chen slashed his bone saber forward, and the golden ape was sent reeling back. With every step, the void collapsed behind it. The dragon is the emperor of all beasts. I possess Dragonblood, so your psychic beast's bloodline suppression is completely ineffective against me. Instead, it is the one suppressed by my Dragonblood. If I had to rely on brute force against an ordinary immortal king, perhaps they would have a chance. But you have no chance. Long Chen continued to send the golden ape tumbling back. No matter how it roared, it was unable to stabilize itself. Suddenly, Long Chen vanished, and the force he was using to push back the golden ape also vanished. The ape was caught off guard, and it stumbled forward. A thin red line then appeared in the void. When that thread reached the ape's waist, it roared and its body was cut in two at the waist. The red thread slowly stopped, and only then did Long Chen's figure reappear. That red thread was the cutting edge of the bone saber. Blood-red flame runes had appeared on the edge of the blade. When they slowly faded, the bone saber returned to its normal appearance. This bone saber has found the right master. Only in my hands can it unleash its full potential. A fiery light shone in Long Chen's eyes as he looked at his bone saber. When flame energy was inserted into the saber, its sharpness instantly soared to an absolutely terrifying realm. Just now, he had only been testing its sharpness. He hadn't expected that when Hualinger's power was merged with the bone blade, it would unleash such power. This immortal king beast was unable to stop it. Impossible! Jiang Weizhong was shocked. He didn't believe his eyes. He had personally fought this ape before. With that king item, the golden scepter, even he was forced to stay away from it. With its powerful physical body, even a king item couldn't possibly cut it in two. After Long Chen sliced the ape in two, he now raised his saber. When pointing the tip at the heavens, its edge once more reddened. He once more slashed it down, not giving Jiang Baihe any chance to recover. On the other hand, Jiang Baihe was in control of the golden ape, and he suffered the same pain of having his body cut in two. After enduring the pain, he swept out his golden scepter to receive Long Chen's attack. Boom! The bone saber was stopped. But a chilling wind still hacked down, and the ape's body, which had yet to separate, was sliced through once more, turning into 4 pieces. With it slain, Jiang Baihe screamed and flew out of its head. The golden scepter was sent flying into the distance. Jiang Baihe was covered in blood, which was from the golden ape. His eyes were bulging and veins throbbed on his forehead. He had endured the pain of the golden ape being slain, and it almost caused his mind to collapse. The sensation of death had been all too real. "Watch out behind you!" Jiang Weizhong suddenly shouted. At some point, Long Chen had appeared behind Jiang Baihe like a phantom. Regretfully, his warning was too late. When Long Chen's saber fell, Jiang Baihe's body was cut apart. The Yuhua Palace's experts all felt their heads buzz and turn blank. The leading heavenly genius of the Yuhua Palace had been slain just like this? "Long Chen, I'll kill you!" Jiang Weizhong exploded with killing intent. Just as he was about to attack Long Chen, a hand slammed into his back. As a result, his roiling blood qi instantly froze and his cultivation base was frozen. Jiang Weizhong turned back. It was the Patriarch who had stopped him. His eyes instantly reddened. The Patriarch's hand once more struck him, and his body stiffened. He was unable to even speak. "Just watch. Something major is happening." The Patriarch's expression was surprisingly grave. There was a hint of panic in his eyes. Long Chen had cut Jiang Baihe in two. However, everyone was startled to find that Jiang Baihe didn't die. The two parts of his body were connected by countless black threads. Just as his body was split apart, they were bound back together. What? The Yuhua Palace's experts were all dumbfounded. Today, they were seeing something that they couldn't imagine. However, some particular elders amongst them, who were so old that they were 1 foot in the grave, were especially horrified. Could it be? Those elders collapsed on the ground, not daring to believe their eyes. After cutting Jiang Baihe apart, Chen didn't continue attacking. He rested his saber on his shoulder and watched Jiang Baihe fuse his body back together. A hint of shock appeared on his face. No wonder I was so disgusted by your aura. So you are an underworld ghost seed. Underworld ghost seed? When they heard that, countless people were horrified. Some of them even began to quiver uncontrollably. Per 3269 Lifeform of the Ghost Dao, Chapter 3269 Lifeform of the Ghost Dao Underworld Ghost Seed, an ancient secret. Legend was that they were the source of all the chaos in the immortal world. They were part of the Ghost Dao and had always been infiltrating the immortal world. Those people who had underworld ghost seeds implanted in them became puppets for the Ghost Dao but appeared normal on the surface. Many experts were even completely unaware that they were underworld ghost seeds. It was similar to a slave seed rooted deep within their soul. Furthermore, it would silently accumulate a mysterious power. The legend was that many invaders of the Ghost Dao had infiltrated the immortal world back in ancient times. The underworld ghost seeds then became lackeys for the Ghost Dao, allowing them to attack the immortal world from the inside and outside, dealing serious damage. The current immortal world still had many ancient battlefields overflowing with ghost chi. Also, people didn't dare to set foot there because countless life forms of the Ghost Dao were buried there. The life forms of the Ghost Dao were absolutely terrifying, which was why all their expressions changed when Chen mentioned an underworld ghost seed. Jiang Baihe's eyes had turned black, and he emitted a sinister light. Now, black qi revolved around him, and his aura had completely changed. His current appearance was chilling. When Jiang Baihe extended a hand, the giant golden scepter flew into his hold, transforming into a 9-foot-long form. Damnable human race, you ruined all my work. I'll definitely kill you today. Jiang Baihe's voice had also changed, becoming sharp and thin. It pierced people's ears like a needle. The current Jiang Baihe was no longer human. His consciousness had been completely dominated by the underworld ghost seed. That will depend on whether or not you have that ability. Speaking of which, let me ask you something. I once encountered a ghost ship and saw many death spirits on top of it. Are those the same as you? Asked Chen lightly. Jiang Baihe's black eyes seemed shocked. He coldly said, "Brat, you really have big guts. You even dare to enter a ghost ship. You've been infected by immense karma. You and your family, everyone connected to you, will die miserable deaths." Hearing that Chen had entered a ghost ship, the Yuhua Palace's experts were stunned. They felt a chill on their backs. When others saw ghost ships, they instantly fled, afraid of being infected by misfortune just from an extra glance. However, Chen was actually aboard one of those ghost ships. What were his guts made out of? "Teach, I've seen many secrets, so I'm not afraid of trouble. No wonder I felt Jiang Baihe was so loathsome and I wanted to crush him. So it was you. I'm curious. Legend says that when underworld ghost seeds appear, calamity will descend, and the people will be in peril. So does your arrival indicate that the immortal world's era of peace is coming to an end? Asked Chen. In the Luo family, Luo Zichuan had mentioned that the immortal world's peace was about to be broken. Chen was still unclear on what that meant. Luo Zichuan had only mentioned it and not explained it. But with the ghost ship he had seen on the Devil Sea and this underworld ghost seed here, Chen felt like he had gotten a sniff of something unusual. No matter how your human race cultivates, you will still be livestock to be slaughtered. Asking so many questions is meaningless, sneered Jiang Baihe. Chen smiled. Ah, no wonder people say ghosts are shrewd. It seems that the life forms of the Ghost Dao really are smart. So you won't leak any useful information. Then let me see just how powerful the life forms of the Ghost Dao are. Chen suddenly slid forward. Despite moving in an arc, he gave people the feeling that he was going straight. Just as he attacked, Jiang Baihe also made his move. Black qi erupted from his body and coiled around his scepter. He formed a hand seal with his left hand. Boom! The bone blade and the golden scepter collided, unleashing an explosion of black qi and golden light. Long Chen rapidly pushed back Jiang Baihe. This is the power of a cultivator of the ghost Dao? It doesn't seem to be anything special, said Long Chen disdainfully. Suddenly, a pair of bat-like wings appeared on Jiang Baihe's back. After that, the void shuddered and his retreat came to a stop. Those bat wings spread, unleashing a wave of sinister aura. 2 sharp bone nails then appeared on the tips of the wings, and they stabbed toward Long Chen. Those 3-feet-long nails unleashed an ear-piercing sound, as if the 10,000 Daos were even pierced by them. Long Chen shoved him back and retreated, just narrowly avoiding those bone nails. If it weren't for the suppression of the laws here, how could you even receive 3 blows from me? Shouted Jiang Baihe. With his wings spread and his golden scepter, he pressed the attack against Long Chen. Moreover, countless eye designs appeared on his wings, which continued to emit black qi. The air of death filled that black qi. It was as if the laws of heaven and earth were being corroded. Attacks rained down from Jiang Baihe's wings and scepter. Surrounded by black qi, he was like a ghost king. He repeatedly forced Long Chen back. That black qi seems to contain a similar aura to the auras on the ghost ship. They really are from the same place. Long Chen's heart shook. If Luo Zichuan was correct and the immortal world's era of peace was about to come to an end, then this fellow and the group behind him were one of the causes. Jiang Baihe's sudden eruption of power and Long Chen's forced retreat left the Yuhua Palace's experts with complicated expressions. At this point, they didn't even know who they should be cheering for. If Jiang Baihe had turned into an underworld ghost seed, then he had to be killed. The underworld ghost seed had fully merged with him already, and they could no longer be separated. If they left him alive, he would cause a calamity. Furthermore, if news spread that the Yuhua Palace dared to keep an infected Jiang Baihe, countless sects would join forces to wipe them off the map. They all knew that this Jiang Baihe was no longer the old Jiang Baihe. He was already under the control of a life form of the ghost Dao. All that remained of him was this husk. Long Chen's bone saber danced as he fought. He quickly began to take back the advantage. Even against 3 terrifying weapons, he was still fighting freely. The Patriarch once more pressed a hand against Jiang Weizhong. After that, the bindings on him vanished and he regained his freedom. However, his face was ashen now. He seemed to have aged several decades in an instant. He knew that Jiang Baihe was already dead. The genius of their Jiang family that appeared only once every 10,000 years was dead. Despite him being filled with hatred and resentment, the Patriarch said, "Who would have thought that Jiang Baihe's body would have an underworld ghost seed planted inside?" However, all things have their own karma. If Jiang Baihe's heart was firm, how could he have been infected by a ghost seed? Your vision was short-sighted as you only wanted a quick return. If you had properly taught him, instead of helping him clean up his messes, perhaps he wouldn't have ended up like this. When he was 15, due to some unintentional words, he cruelly slaughtered someone, and you suppressed that matter. At 17, he assaulted and killed the woman of the Meng family. You were the one who went out and secretly gave them compensation to settle. You were unaware that your conduct drove him step by step into the abyss. Only then did the underworld ghost seed choose him. Patriarch, you? Jiang Weizhong was startled. Not mentioning it doesn't mean that I didn't know about it, said the Patriarch. Then, why didn't you stop it? If you had. Jiang Weizhong's voice quivered. Would stopping it have any use? I even came out of seclusion this time just to stop things, but what did you do? In the end, good and bad will get their retribution. The bitter wine that you brewed will have to be swallowed by you. You can't blame others. The Patriarch shook his head and sighed. Boom. Just then, an immense explosion shook the battlefield. Jiang Baihe suddenly raised his head and roared. Death Qi swirled beneath his feet. When people looked at the current Jiang Baihe, all their expressions changed. What monster is that? REBVEL, C for a better _user. Tur 3270 Clash of King Items, Chapter 3270 Clash of King Items. Following Jiang Baihe's roar, his entire body turned black. Countless spots appeared on his body as if he was a corpse. After that, his mouth grew and a set of sharp teeth could be seen. Also, 2 bumps appeared on top of his head. Bone spurs grew out of them until they became white horns on his head. Similar spurs appeared on his elbows, shoulders, and palms. They were all similar to the bone nails on his wings and were incomparably sharp. They emitted a sharp light that made people's hair stand on end. This was no longer Jiang Baihe. It was a truly terrifying life form with black qi gushing out of his entire body. His current state horrified people. They had never seen a creature with such an ominous appearance. It was even more terrifying than the nightmare ghosts of legends. As for Long Chen, he suddenly nodded with comprehension. So you are using your core energy to summon a domain where you can resist the suppression of the laws of the immortal world. That really is the same principle as the ghost ship's innate dark domain. I suppose that's what it means for it to sail through the Tao. Long Chen thought of when he had encountered that ghost ship. Despite it clearly being a clear and sunny day, that ghost ship caused the surroundings to turn into night. It was just like the current Jiang Baihe. You really have seen a soldier transport ship? Asked the monster Jiang Baihe. A trace of shock appeared in his vertical pupils. A soldier transport ship? In other words, soldiers through the Tao really exist? It seems that you set up this scheme a long time ago. Is it to wage war against the immortal world? Asked Long Chen. Just then, a black gate appeared in the black qi gushing out of Jiang Baihe. Not good. He's going to run. The Patriarch's expression changed. Just like everyone else, he thought that Jiang Baihe had entered this state in order to fight Long Chen. Unexpectedly, this life form of the ghost Tao was extremely crafty. This was nothing more than a bluff for his retreat. The Patriarch was just about to move when the black gate exploded, destroyed by a black sword. This sudden change caught everyone off guard. They stared in shock at that gate. A young maiden wrapped in black lightning runes had appeared within the gate. You want to play tricks with me? Too naive. In my eyes, your tricks are incredibly childish. Remember, in this world, it is humans whose hearts are the most difficult to read. Your tricks might be able to trick ghosts, but it's far from enough to trick humans, sneered Long Chen. Although this ghost Tao life form had put on an act of putting everything on the line, Long Chen had sensed him stealthily merging a portion of his power into the void. At that moment, Long Chen knew that he was up to something. According to his guess, this could only be used for a strange attack or to escape. But in order to be safe, he had Lei Linger conceal herself in the void while he drew all the attention. In truth, Jiang Baihe's fierce attacks were also nothing more than bait to draw Long Chen's attention so that he wouldn't notice him preparing to escape. However, the result was the opposite of what he had attempted. This life form was instead schemed against by Long Chen. Lei Linger's appearance terrified Jiang Baihe. He sensed terrifying power from her body. Suddenly, Jiang Baihe rushed toward Long Chen with his scepter. When strange marks flowed on top of it, a destructive aura erupted. Even the Patriarch's expression changed. He's going to detonate his king item. Logically, Jiang Baihe didn't possess the power to control a king item. He couldn't unleash a king item's true power, nor could he order it to detonate. However, in the hands of this life form, some secret technique had been activated to force it to detonate. It had to be known that this golden scepter was one of the two supreme treasures of the Yuhua Palace. If it detonated here, then all the surrounding space would be blasted out of existence. That kind of destructive power was something perhaps only a few people here would be able to survive. Moreover, the majority of the Yuhua Palace's people were gathered here. If it was allowed to detonate, the Yuhua Palace would truly be done for. They would never be able to recover from such a thing. Just as Jiang Baihe's face was twisted in a sinister and ruthless expression, as if he wanted to drag everyone down with him, Long Chen extended his left hand. A golden pill furnace appeared. After that, the pill furnace smashed into Jiang Baihe's scepter. The clash of two king's items caused a deafening ringing. Jiang Baihe was surprised that Long Chen also had a king item. Furthermore, when these two king items clashed, their runes formed a terrifying resonance, and ripples spread, flattening the mountain range. The surrounding experts were sent flying, coughing up blood. Cracks appeared in their bodies. A clash of king items unleashed terrifying shockwaves. Even if it was just a simple collision, it still activated the self-protective powers of the king items. Long Chen's arm turned numb from the impact and was bleeding. He almost lost hold over the pill furnace. However, this attack also destroyed one of Jiang Baihe's arms. The scepter was then sent flying into the distance. Long Chen had managed to stop the detonation of the scepter. With his other hand, he swung his bone saber, and the red pattern once more appeared on its edge. On the other hand, black blood sprayed as Jiang Baihe's head flew into the air. Boom! Just then, Lei Linger's lightning sword slashed onto his body, blasting it apart. Jiang Baihe's body was destroyed. Although black runes floated out, he was unable to merge the tiny pieces back together. The black runes slowly turned to dust. Long Chen had previously managed to cut Jiang Baihe's body apart, but the latter had managed to fuse the pieces of his body. However, after Lei Linger's attack this time, his physical body was truly destroyed. Now, all that remained of Jiang Baihe was a single head, which looked at Long Chen. He suddenly opened his mouth, and a blood arrow shot toward him. When that blood arrow appeared, Long Chen's heart quivered. He didn't dare to block it, so he dodged to the side. Boom! The blood arrow shot through the air and exploded into the distance. Black blood then filled that space. A black hole was corroded into the void. Looking at that black hole, people were horrified. That black hole was like a devil's eye. Even the heavenly Daos were corroded, so this thing could not be touched by normal human. Even a weapon would probably be corroded if it touched the blood. Seeing that this underworld ghost seed was able to unleash such a terrifying attack even when all that was left of him was a head, everyone turned icy cold. This life form was absolutely ferocious. As soon as it spat out the blood arrow, Lei Linger sliced through its head. After that, its head exploded, revealing a black crystal. Long Chen was just about to reach out and grab it when his expression completely changed. He swung his bone saber toward the black crystal. Favorite. That black crystal was the Underworld ghost seed. It was the seed that had germinated within Jiang Baihe's body. Long Chen wanted to grab and study it. He wanted to know the secrets of the ghost Dao. But when he went to grab it, an intense sensation of danger filled his entire body. He instinctively gave up on grabbing it and swung his saber. Boom! The crystal exploded. But a strange black figure appeared within it. Lei Linger then slashed her sword through that figure, destroying it. That life form's final roar rang out through the air. You've been infected by the ghost Dao's karma. It won't be long before you become the next Underworld ghost seed. Boom! With a one-handed seal, Lei Linger caused lightning to ravage the space, instantly purifying this black chi. The lightning of a heavenly tribulation was a supreme yang force, and it countered all evil and demonic forms of energy. Thus, while this life form of the ghost Dao could struggle against Long Chen, it was completely unable to stop Lei Linger's attacks. What nonsense! You even have to scare me as you die. Fortunately, Boss San's guts aren't small, sneered Long Chen. After purifying the black chi, Lei Linger returned to Long Chen's arm. Long Chen then waved his hand, and the pill furnace flew back to him. The bone saber was also sent to the primal chaos space. The battle had ended. But the Yuhua Palace's experts were still shaking. The youngsters in particular were horrified. They had been frightened by Jiang Baihe's final form. Looking at it was enough to make their souls want to flee. They couldn't summon the courage to fight it. Legend was that every time the ghost Dao invaded the immortal world, endless calamities followed. This lifeform's appearance was so frightening that it naturally drew out the fear deep in people's hearts. That could easily cause a heart devil. As a result of this, the few images of the life forms of the ghost Dao were kept secret and not publicly disseminated. Now that they saw one of these life forms in person, the seniors who had read about them felt cold. Bai Shishir couldn't help sighing when she saw those terrified expressions. In comparison, Long Chen was a true expert. He didn't have such fear. Climbing on top of the ghost ship had been a tempering experience for her. Although she also felt some fear toward Jiang Baihe's appearance, it wasn't enough to make her lose her courage. Even Bai Xiaolo wasn't in a state as bad as the Yuhua Palace's disciples. It could be seen that people's guts were trained through tempering. Moreover, Qin Feng and Qi Yu's expressions were both calm as if nothing had happened. The two of them knew that Long Chen definitely wouldn't lose. They had absolute confidence in him. At this moment, the scepter flew into the Patriarch's hand. His expression was a bit ugly. He didn't know what secret technique this lifeform had used, but the king item was now infected with death chi. Perhaps it was part of the secret technique that had allowed the lifeform to control this king item, forcing it to obey his will and detonate upon his command. The detonation of the scepter had been prevented by Long Chen, but this king item was still damaged. It would take a huge amount of time and resources for it to recover. However, in any case, the golden scepter had been returned. That was already something fortuitous. It's all thanks to Dean Long's supreme might and wisdom. You managed to see through the Underworld ghost seed. Otherwise, once he grew up, my Yuhua palace would be destroyed by him. The Yuhua palace will remember this favor, said the Patriarch, putting away the scepter, his expression a bit complicated. Long Chen had killed Jiang Baihe, and the Patriarch actually had to thank him. Even after living countless years, he felt extremely embarrassed by this. Ultimately, he still retained his rationality. He knew that if Long Chen hadn't come, Jiang Baihe's identity as an underworld ghost seed wouldn't have been exposed. Once he grew up, he would definitely gain control over the Yuhua Palace. At that time, the Yuhua Palace might very likely become a stronghold for the Ghost Dao's invasion to the immortal world. At that time, the Yuhua Palace would no longer exist. Hence, although the Patriarch found it a bit hard to accept, he still had to thank Long Chen. Everyone within the Yuhua Palace had to thank him. No need for thanks. My goal in coming here was to find justice for my brother. It was all a coincidence. I've long since gotten used to bad luck. As for whether others thank me or hate me, I don't really mind. I can permit other people to have different views of me, and I can respect every person's opinion. Of course, the condition for that is that they don't provoke me or my brothers. Green rivers don't change, clear water flows long. Hopefully if we meet again, we can drink together happily, not viewing each other with hostility. Goodbye. Long Chen cupped his fists toward the Patriarch and turned away. Bai Shi, Bai Xiaole, and Su Zixiong immediately followed. Qin Feng then patted Qiyu's shoulder and smiled. Good brother. Boss didn't say anything to you because he's worried that you would abandon your lover. Remember, the Dragonblood warriors are brothers for life. If you need anything, just send us a word. No matter how far apart we are, we'll immediately come. Take care of yourself, brother. Qin Feng then started walking away with Long Chen and the others. Qiyu watched as they left. He then looked toward Yuxian and sighed. Now do you understand why the karmic luck divine pillar would crack? Long Chen not only possesses immense power, but he even possesses a king item pill furnace. If he had unleashed this power in the Yuhua Palace, then a clash of king items would have destroyed the sect. There's even that bone saber, which isn't a king item but is on the same level. If I were to take action, at most I would be able to beat him but not kill him. At that time, the only survivors from the Yuhua Palace would be us, two old fellows. Now do you think that I was wrong to stop you? Said the Patriarch lightly as he watched Long Chen and the others leave. Disciple admits his wrongs. Jiang Weizhong was pale. It looked as if he had aged countless years, and his expression was miserable. But there was also overwhelming hatred in his eyes. Even he himself wasn't sure whether he should hate Long Chen or himself. He had indulged Jiang Baihe too much. Perhaps it was precisely due to this that an evil flame within him was stoked to the point that an underworld ghost seed set its sights on him. If he had been more strict with Jiang Baihe, perhaps none of this would have happened. However, in this world, there were not so many ifs or buts, nor was there any medicine for regret. Starting today, go into seclusion and reflect on yourself. Qing he will temporarily take over the position of Palace Master, said the Patriarch. Jiang Weizhong's position was stripped from him just like that. Although there was a hint of unwillingness in his eyes, he nodded. Disciple understands. The Patriarch then nodded as well. To another elder, he said, disseminate the news of an underworld ghost seed appearing in the Yuhua Palace. All sects should raise their guard. Sigh, perhaps the immortal world's era of peace will end with our generation. The Patriarch led everyone back to the Yuhua Palace. Everyone was gone, leaving behind a ruined battlefield. As a gust of evil wind blew by, the whistle of sand blowing in the air sounded like the cries of ghosts. No one knew whether or not this was an ominous omen to far more terrible things. Favorite. As Long Chen brought Fisherman and the others away, Qinglong looked at the distant palace and sighed. There's nothing to sigh about. Qiyu has found a home for himself, and he's accompanied by a great woman. We can be at peace with that, said Long Chen. Although that was what he said, in the end he didn't know what he felt about Qiyu staying here. By staying here, it was fated that Qiyu wouldn't climb as high. However, every person had their own will. Long Chen couldn't force it, especially not when it came to love. Yuxian had helped Qiyu out immensely, so for Qiyu to stay behind was only right. Boss. Suddenly, they heard someone shouting and Long Chen and the others saw Qiyu rushing over to them. Long Chen's expression sank. Although he found it a bit hard to accept that Qiyu would leave the Dragonblood Legion, it would be even more unacceptable for him to simply abandon his companion. Boss, listen to me. I explained it to Yuxian, and she agreed with me, said Qiyu hastily. I told her that the appearance of an underworld ghost seed indicates that a great tribulation will likely befall the immortal world. Once the war starts, who will be safe? When the time comes, would I have to watch as the ghost Dao's experts slaughter everyone I care about? What if we have children and I can only watch as they are killed? We cannot endure such unimaginable pain. So, Yuxian has agreed with my decision. I have to get stronger, and only then can we live with dignity. If we aren't strong enough, then even if we hide in the Yuhua palace, we will be powerless to resist when calamity strikes. She loves me and I love her. She has promised to wait for me until I can provide a safe and stable home for her. Hearing that, Long Chen's face softened. You aren't lying? Boss, how could I have the courage to do such a thing? She really has agreed with me. She isn't here herself because she's worried that she won't be able to handle saying goodbye. So I came by myself. Qiyu's eyes reddened slightly. Clearly, he was also unwilling to part with Yuxian. Yuxian had helped him pass through the most difficult days of his life. He was unwilling to part with this warm and gentle woman, but there was also no helping it. He wasn't the only one who sensed how serious the problem was. Just from the expression of the Patriarch, it could be seen just how grave the implications of an underworld ghost seed were. It was precisely due to this that everyone in the Yuhua palace was deeply worried, and Yuxian was no exception. Thus, she didn't stop Qiyu from leaving. Long Chen then nodded and patted Qiyu's shoulder. He smiled slightly. Brother, welcome back. Seeing that Long Chen didn't decline, Qiyu was overjoyed. He had been worried that Long Chen would reject him due to Yuxian. Good brother, let's all work hard so that we can live with dignity. When we climb to the peak with Boss, we'll create our own peaceful world. Then we can all marry and have children. We can spend our days drinking and eating, playing with our children. Qinglong laughed. He was delighted that Qiyu had returned. The heavy atmosphere from encountering an underworld ghost seed lightened due to everyone's joy at Qiyu's return. After that, they went to a nearby valley and killed some pheasants. They wanted to cook them by the river for celebration. Boss, what is an underworld ghost seed? You should know a bit about them, right? After eating, Qinglong couldn't help asking this question as he poured a bowl of wine for Long Chen. Everyone's ears perked up. Even Fisherman put down her wine and looked at Long Chen. Long Chen finished his wine and solemnly said, "This matter is an ancient secret, and there are only some fragmentary mentions within the records of the Academy. Some of what I know came from those fragments, while some are what I guessed based on the questionable period within history. When speaking of the ghost world, it is not too different from the netherworld. However, the netherworld and the ghost world are two different worlds. Based on the 6 Daos, you would have the Hell Dao and the Hungry Ghost Dao. But if you view them purely based on the 6 Daos, it would be a bit contradictory and wouldn't make sense. Thus, all you need to know is that the ghost world possesses its own independent world with its own laws just like the netherworld. The netherworld is where living creatures go to when they die. However, based on what I know, not every life form goes to the netherworld after dying. When Long Chen mentioned this, he thought of Ling Yuan and Ming Zhanyue. They were gods in control of a netherworld. Long Chen knew more about the netherworld than others. But when it came to the ghost Dao, it was such a mysterious existence that even he was unable to come into contact with it. Long Chen continued, furthermore, it appears that speaking of the ghost Dao is taboo in the immortal world. I've gone through many texts, and whenever the topic starts to shift to this area, they will simply brush it off and not give any details. As for the Underworld ghost seed, I don't really know much. I wanted to grab Jiang Baihe's Underworld ghost seed to study it, but it really was ruthless. I almost got injured by it. Hearing that vague explanation, everyone was disappointed. But Long Chen smiled. There's no need to be nervous. What will come will come. Worrying won't help. But based on what we saw today, the immortal world will very likely be flipped on its head soon. What we need to do is gather all the brothers of the Dragonblood Legion before that day comes. Otherwise, if we are all scattered when the calamity strikes, we'll be beaten one by one, said Long Chen. Qiyu nodded. In the Yuhua palace, the Patriarch's worried expression had told him that the immortal world was not the free world of gods and immortals that he had imagined. In this place, there was also fighting. There was also killing. In fact, this place might be worse than the Martial Heaven continent. At the very least, on the Martial Heaven continent, people cared about relationships. That didn't hold so strongly in the immortal world. People in the immortal world possessed long lifespans, and an ordinary cultivator could live for thousands of years effortlessly. So, they could reproduce tens or even hundreds of generations of people. They might not even know how many children they had, let alone care about their relationships. It was precisely due to this merciless immortal world that Qiyu cherished the warmth that Yuxian had given him. That was why he had to get stronger to protect her. Within this chaotic world, he would create a peaceful home for her. If he wanted to get stronger, he had to follow Long Chen. The other Dragonblood warriors were the same. They had to join forces in order to protect themselves. Now what? Asked Baihe. Long Chen's smile suddenly turned mischievous. Baihe stared at him oddly, not knowing what this smile indicated. All of a sudden, Long Chen waved his finger and pointed behind him. Baihe instantly understood. When a sword came flying out of its sheath, golden light exploded. It slashed in the direction that Long Chen pointed. Blood mist exploded where that golden light passed through. They didn't even see the person before they were killed. Baihe and the others stared in confusion, not knowing what was going on. They had no idea that someone had been spying on them while they were eating. Amazing! Even without hitting them directly, the shockwaves of the sword qi were enough to kill a late-stage divine lord. Long Chen raised his thumb. A giant ditch was left in the ground, which was covered in golden powder. Following this simple slash, the earth's metal energy was actually drawn out. No wonder Baihe loved this sword so much. Long Chen was unable to imagine just how terrifying it would be once Baihe was able to unleash its full power. Who was that? Asked Baihe. She hadn't noticed this person at all. She hadn't sensed anything, but Long Chen had made a cutting motion to her and pointed in that direction. Who else could it be? Those sinister fellows from the Bloodkill Hall, they really have some ability. They already found us, said Long Chen disdainfully. He had to admit that the Bloodkill Hall had some skill. Long Chen and the others had been traveling in secret and had only revealed their whereabouts when they arrived at the Yuhua Palace. But the Bloodkill Hall had caught up to them so quickly. They really were like prairie dogs. Their noses were exceptionally sharp. However, Long Chen wasn't prey, he was the hunter. When his prey sent themselves to him, he wouldn't show mercy. We've been exposed so quickly? Then what about the mission? Asked Baihe, her expression changing slightly. Long Chen smiled. Foolish girl, I already revealed my status as the 7th Branch Academy's dean in the Yuhua Palace. This is no longer a secret mission. Call me a foolish girl again. Baihe glared at him, but she also couldn't help asking, why did you do that? The deputy dean told you that this was an absolutely secret mission. By waving a flag and announcing it to the world, aren't you allowing the other side to prepare in advance? They have their plans, and I also have my own plans to deal with them. The Academy has been playing chess against Lord Brahma for so many years, and yet there's been no improvement after all this time. Why would I play using the same style? In this world, not all things should be done after coming up with a plan. If you just act according to your own heart, you'll be able to react faster. Well, it's not like I know how to play chess anyway. If I wanted to play against them, I'd be crushed in an instant. No? Said Long Chen. Then how are you planning to do this? Asked Baihe. We're going to the Vile Dragon domain and take a look at the situation, said Long Chen. Just like that? Just like that. Long Chen nodded. With no plan at all? Baihe's eyes widened. What kind of plan could I have? Do you think that a few of us are capable of completing this mission? You're too naive. Long Chen shook his head. He had her summon the flying boat, and they set off once more. Long Chen, don't tell me that you don't care about this matter at all. Baihe looked at him seriously. Baihe knew just how important this matter was to the High Firmament Academy, so Long Chen's lax attitude made her heart sink. It couldn't be that Long Chen had simply accepted the position of dean to play around, could it? Long Chen laughed and looked at Baihe. Her flawless face was so close to him. Enjoying her beauty at such a close distance was a blessing. Being stared at, Baihe angrily said, "Talk seriously." "Your skin is great," said Long Chen seriously. "Bastard, I told you to talk seriously." "Stop talking nonsense," said Baihe, so angry that her jade-like face reddened. "I already told you. I have my own methods. My path is different from most people's, so if you feel that my methods are wrong, you can leave. I don't like being questioned all the time, nor am I used to explaining myself to others. Those who approve of me will follow me through water and fire without asking about the future. There are also many others who don't approve of me. We all walk our own paths and we shouldn't disturb each other." Long Chen spoke indifferently, turning to look out the window. These words weren't very polite, but Long Chen also had no way around it. Baihe was stubborn and had her own viewpoints. She wanted to know what the next step was, what the overall plan was, and what they were doing. Putting it frankly, she was someone used to being in control. However, Long Chen was always unconstrained, doing whatever he wanted without preparing complicated plans in advance. So, he was getting angry with Baihe for pressing him on this issue. The heavens had no second son, and an army had no second leader. There could only be one head commander. If someone didn't listen to that commander, then sooner or later, it would cause things to collapse. Baihe was stunned. She hadn't expected Long Chen to become hostile just over this, so her expression sank. Seeing this, Baihe, Qinglong, and the others hastily ran to another cabin, closing the door to avoid being implicated. Meanwhile, Long Chen pretended not to see Baihe's change in expression. He continued staring out the window. However, he was shocked to find tears dripping down Baihe's face. This stubborn girl actually had times when she cried. He then turned to look at Baihe, not knowing what to do. Baihe also didn't say anything. She turned away, not looking at Long Chen. Everyone within the flying boat was silent. After a while, Long Chen awkwardly handed her a handkerchief. Baihe ignored him at first, but after a bit, she reached out and accepted it, blotting her tears. "In all my years, it's my first time being driven to tears due to rage at someone," said Baihe coldly. "That's because if it was someone else, you'd have killed them before getting to this point," said Long Chen, shrugging helplessly. With just that, Baihe chuckled. But after that she seemed embarrassed again and turned away. "You bastard!" Baihe was vexed and embarrassed, yet also puzzled. She then reached out and pinched the soft flesh at Long Chen's waist. "Aya!" Long Chen screamed. Qinglong and the others who were eavesdropping exchanged glances. They didn't know how to help. Long Chen looked at his waist. There was a large bruise now. Baihe truly was vicious. She had actually used her metal energy. Seeing Long Chen look at her, Baihe seemed pleased. It seemed that she had at least vented. All right. You really are all right. I'm not going to quibble with you over this. But this matter has to be clear to you. Since you've come with me, there's no need to bring a brain. Just listen to me. I won't repeat myself, said Long Chen angrily. Baihe didn't reply, not agreeing or disagreeing. After several days and several transportation formations, their flying boat finally reached the Vile Dragon domain. However, they had just entered this domain when they heard furious roars shaking the heavens, startling all of them. Damn, those are immortal king devil beasts. Those roars caused Qiyu's expression to change. It had to be known that they were barely on the edge of the Vile Dragon domain, but there were already immortal king devil beasts here? Then what about deeper? The Vile Dragon domain was an extremely dangerous land. The majority of it was occupied by various devil beasts, and the human race was at the bottom of the food chain here. Only some special places here possessed auras that devil beasts disliked, allowing the human race to establish cities. Such places were paradise for adventurers. This giant domain was filled with devil beast territories and very few people. That meant countless precious medicines and fruits were just waiting to be plucked. Some people might be lucky to encounter some rare immortal grass and instantly soar. Thus, the Vile Dragon domain had countless adventurers gathered within it. However, countless people also died within the wilderness. This was a dangerous land filled with allure. Right now, Long Chen and the others already heard roars right as they entered. They didn't know if this was simply an intimidation tactic to dissuade them from entering. There are so many of us. We're not afraid of immortal king devil beasts, right? After all, boss even slew Jiang Baihe's psychic beast, said Baihe. However, Long Chen shook his head. You're thinking too simply. Jiang Baihe's psychic beast should be called the most foolish psychic beast at the immortal king realm. Otherwise, with his spiritual strength, there would have been no way that he could control it. Although its blood chi was shocking, it didn't possess any divine abilities. To put it frankly, it could only be used to scare others. If Jiang Baihe wasn't controlling it, then any one of you could have easily slain it if you simply didn't fight it directly. There are also differences amongst devil beasts and humans. For example, despite both being in the Four-Peak realm, is your combat power on the same level as an ordinary disciple of the academy? No, Baihe was left at a loss for words. He truly had been thinking too simply. Just like amongst humans, there were differences between devil beasts. Despite being in the same realm, the difference between their combat powers could be as great as a heavenly chasm. However, Xiaola's chance has come. If we can obtain a youngling of an immortal king devil beast, Xiaola will have an immortal king mount. Are you moved? Qinglong smiled. Xiaola's eyes instantly lit up. Last time, he had wanted one of the 6-horned sea serpents as a mount, but Long Chen had killed them all. Now that they were in the Vile Dragon domain, his chance had come. Qinglong's reminder made him feel anxious and start looking. His 3 flower pupils were able to control any devil beast, as long as his spiritual strength was strong enough to endure the impact of the devil beast's mental energy. The flying boat slowly entered the domain, and they no longer dared to fly so quickly. If they charged into the territory of an immortal king devil beast with full speed and couldn't beat it, they might not be able to run. The spiritual chi here is surprisingly dense. Baihe looked outside. There were quite a few places where immortal mist lingered. The immortal spiritual chi was dense, making this place perfect for cultivation. But why did no powerful sects set up roots here? It was curious. Hey, can you speak? Baihe looked at Long Chen, who was silently staring out of the window. Speak? About what? Asked Long Chen. Only then did Baihe realize that she hadn't even asked her question. Seeing his confused look, she was embarrassed. I was saying, the spiritual chi here is very dense, and it's suitable for cultivation. Why are the large sects not setting up a base here? The spiritual chi is dense but also contains a wild aura. That's due to the influence of the devil beast's bloodline pressures. If you cultivate here and absorb too much of the spiritual chi, you will become irritable and easy to anger. And when you attack higher realms, heart devils can easily appear. Moreover, any large purification formations that are set up here will affect the cultivation of the devil beasts, so they will attack. Unless you are prepared to drive out all the devil beasts in the Vile Dragon domain, no one dares to do such a thing. explained Long Chen. The berserk aura within this spiritual qi was suitable for the cultivation of devil beasts but not humans. Hence, purification formations that affected this aura would definitely not be allowed by the devil beasts. Then you mean that our academy is prepared for such a thing? Asked Baihe in shock. She hadn't expected that the academy that had always been low-key would have such daring. Most likely. I also don't know why the academy would choose the 7th branch academy. The academy naturally has its own considerations. I can't read their intentions, but that doesn't matter. The main thing is that this move definitely isn't easy to make. If we try to do it through normal means, it definitely won't work. So let's just see what will happen, said Long Chen. He was unable to see through the thoughts of the academy. As the world's #1 academy, they could endure all the way to this point. But he also knew that they definitely had their own terrifying trump cards that they relied on behind this. Otherwise, if the High Firmament Academy really had declined to the point that it appeared to, Lord Brahma would have conquered it by now. As for the intentions of those old monsters in the academy that had lived for countless years, it would be strange if Long Chen could see through them. Hence, Long Chen didn't even bother trying to read them. He just needed to do his own work. Accomplishing this mission was all that was required of him. After flying for a while longer, Long Chen had Baihe put away the flying boat, as the sound it made as it passed through the air was too loud. They had already heard several warning roars. The flying boat's sound had clearly disturbed them. Furthermore, a flying boat could not maneuver fast enough. It would be better for them to travel without it. They then began flying individually. All of a sudden, Long Chen waved his hand, and they all came to a stop. He made a gesture to not make any sound. After a bit, there was still no movement. But the earth then began to quiver and a distant mountain exploded. An enormous figure came out of the earth. It was a giant python and it had actually been hidden beneath the earth. When it came out, its target was a leopard. The leopard had been resting on the mountain peak, but the sudden sneak attack sent it flying into the air. It then clawed the python in the head. Although it had been sneak attacked, it reacted shockingly fast. As a result, the python's head smashed into the ground. The mountain range collapsed, and astral winds blew the nearby trees and boulders to dust. Just at this moment, the ground beneath Long Chen and the others' feet also exploded. A long tail whipped out from underground, passing by Long Chen and the others. It then wrapped around the leopard. The leopard managed to avoid the toxic fang but not that tail. Its body was instantly bound. It's done for. Long Chen knew that this leopard was essentially doomed after being bound. They were both immortal king devil beasts. That leopard was clearly smaller than the python, and the python also clearly viewed the leopard as weaker, which was why it became the target for the python's hunt. As expected, the leopard was unable to escape this time, and the python's fang stabbed into its body. The leopard roared, but its body was bound. It was unable to break free. Suddenly, Long Chen made his move. With a flash, he appeared on top of the python's head. A red glow appeared on his bone saber, and he stabbed it into the python's head. As a result, its body quivered and its aura slowly faded. Damn, is my luck so good today? Long Chen took advantage of the python not being on guard toward him to launch a killing blow. He was almost unable to believe it. Did he really gain 2 immortal king devil beasts' corpses just like this? Just as he was excited, an alarm rang in his heart. The next moment, his body swayed, and a silent arrow flew right by his neck. There's someone here. Long Chen was startled. This arrow came without any warning and only narrowly missed his neck. Long Chen also smelled a stinging medicinal fragrance as it shot by. That arrow was actually poisoned. If struck, it would instantly take the life of its target. Hence, Long Chen's gaze instantly turned icy cold. Someone else was secretly watching this battle, so he turned in a certain direction. At some point, hundreds of figures had appeared atop a distant mountain. These people were wearing camouflage, which made them blend into the trees and rocks. Even their faces were painted. Even if you were looking carefully, as long as they arranged themselves properly, it would be very difficult to notice them. They were all experts of disguise. They also seemed to have some other item that caused their auras to merge with the aura of this place. Because of that item, Long Chen's attention was drawn to the immortal king devil beasts, and he actually hadn't noticed them. Hundreds of them had their arrows pointed right at him. Patriarch and the others also walked over and glared coldly at that group. Around half of those people were divine lords, and the others were at the peak of the four-peak realm. Unexpectedly, Long Chen and the others had run into such a large group of experts as soon as they entered the vile dragon domain. "Brat, where did you come from? We are the ones to discover these two devil beasts, so hand over your weapons and scram." Their leader was a large middle-aged man. He eyed Long Chen's bone saber greedily. "You found them? So you mean you don't care to talk reasonably, right?" Long Chen slowly pulled his bone saber out of the python's head. "Where did this brat come from? You want to talk reason with our Azure Dragon gang? But that girl isn't bad. Maybe we should capture her and offer her to the leader. We'd definitely be rewarded," said one of the divine lords, almost drooling as he looked at Patriarch. Patriarch actually smiled rather than getting angry. That beautiful smile stunned that group of people. "I like that you don't talk reason. It just so happens that I don't talk reason either. Was it you who shot that arrow?" Long Chen pointed his saber at the speaker. "That's right, it was Dash." That person was still smiling when his chest was pierced by the bone saber. Long Chen's bone saber had instantly extended hundreds of meters to stab him. When Long Chen had obtained this bone saber, it was originally hundreds of meters long. He had then activated its runes to shrink it. So, now he was able to control its size freely. If it was too large, he couldn't wield it in combat. But shrinking it didn't affect its power. Now he simply allowed it to grow back to its original size, killing that person. Even Patriarch and the others had never seen this move before. "It's good that it was you. I was worried about killing the wrong person." With a single quiver, that person's body exploded and his blood splashed the people beside him. The leader of this group was shocked. Seeing the clothes of Long Chen's group, he had assumed them to be some foolish, inexperienced group of disciples who had come to the vile dragon domain to adventure. It had to be known that the vile dragon domain's infamy was quite resounding. Every year, it attracted a large number of heavenly geniuses. Moreover, many of those heavenly geniuses hadn't come to harvest the precious herbs, but to make a name for themselves. Because of it, many of the arrogant heavenly geniuses in the surroundings came to the vile dragon domain. If they could bring back some powerful devil beast corpses, they could brag about them in the future. Hence, there were always some fools unafraid of death who entered the vile dragon domain just to lose their lives. However, those prideful heavenly geniuses usually didn't die to devil beasts. Instead, they died at the hands of other people. The vile dragon domain was a chaotic and dangerous place, with many gangs constantly fighting each other for territory and treasures. Hence, there were often unimaginable schemes in the undercurrents. This was a world of darkness, a completely different extreme from the outside world. Most of the people who gathered here were traitors of some sects, or perhaps chased by powerful enemies and had no other place to go, or perhaps they were simply naturally violent and liked to kill. In any case, this was a lawless place. There was no king to make laws. It was a place where talking reason was the least reasonable thing. In this place, killing people for their treasures was as common as eating food or drinking water. Originally, these people had set their sights on the leopard. They had arranged a trap over a month. But just as their preparations were completed, that earth element python came out of the underground and attacked. The leopard was then poisoned and dying, while the python was killed by a single blow from Long Chen. If they didn't come out to take advantage at this time, then this wouldn't be the vile dragon domain. Just looking at the clothes of Long Chen's group, they assumed these young people to be nothing more than a group of fat sheep. However, they hadn't expected Long Chen to be even more ruthless than them and directly kill one of them. "Kill them all," shouted the leader. "Qiyu, Zixiong, you can kill them." Long Chen waved his hand. Hearing the command, Qiyu and Su Zixiong instantly attacked. "What about us?" Baihe was just about to attack when he heard that Long Chen only wanted Qiyu and Su Zixiong to fight. "Of course, you're just watching. It is a training session for them." Qinglong shrugged helplessly. Qiyu was like a wild tempest moving through their midst. Over 10 people were killed at the same time by a single stroke of his sword. Su Zixiong followed behind Qiyu. The two of them were like tigers falling upon a flock of sheep. Those people's arrows were originally shot just to scare Long Chen and the others. They had assumed that Long Chen would submit and beg for mercy. But as soon as Qiyu and Su Zixiong charged in, they no longer dared to unleash their arrows. Because at such close range, they could easily injure their own people. That one moment of hesitation resulted in their numbers being rapidly cut down. Go all out. The leader's expression changed. As soon as Qiyu and Su Zixiong started fighting for real, he got a bad feeling. Although the two of them were only in the early four-peak realm, their actual combat power was astonishing. Boom. That leader could barely receive a single blow from Qiyu. But his sword was sent flying and he coughed up blood. Their leader was a late-stage divine lord, so the result of his exchange with Qiyu caused all his allies' expressions to change. Then they saw Long Chen, Bai Shi, Bai Xiaola, and Qin Feng just standing there watching. Seeing this, they instantly realized that they had provoked people that they shouldn't have provoked. Run! In an instant, the same thought ran through all their heads. In just the first clash, almost 100 of them had died. This was no battle, this was a one-sided slaughter. Seeing that even their leader couldn't handle it, without hesitation, these people fled in every direction. Once they fled, Qiyu and Su Zixiong were left dumbfounded. All these people had split up in every direction, so they had no way to chase them all down. The funniest thing was that the leader who had gone all out to receive a single blow from Qiyu had used the resulting force to flee the earliest out of them all. However, after running, he realized that something was wrong. He was at the frontmost of the retreating group, and yet somehow he saw that he was moving toward Long Chen. Long Chen then smiled at him and gave him a deeply emotional slap, sending him tumbling back. Smelly little fellow. Favorite. The leader of this group was sent flying back, coughing up blood with his teeth flying through the air. Never in his dreams would he have imagined that he would run into such a terrifying group. Despite clearly only being in the four-peak realm, their power was so great that this leader despaired. He didn't even know how this was happening. He had clearly been moving away yet somehow ended up going toward Long Chen. Also, Long Chen's slap left his head too dizzy to even think about how this had happened. Boss, should I bring the others back too? Asked Bai Xiaola. It was him who had used spatial energy to move this fellow back. No need. They're all small fries. Only this one is a bit bigger, said Long Chen. He then kicked the ringleader. The ringleader grunted and his body began to spasm. It seemed that he was in unimaginable pain, and his eyes looked like they were going to pop out. Yet he didn't make a sound. At this time, Qiyu and Su Zixiong returned. The other side had too many people and had fled in every direction. Hence, they really were unable to chase them all down. As a result, dozens of them still escaped. Boss, we failed, said Qiyu dejectedly. It's fine. I wasn't planning on killing all of them. If a few small fries didn't escape, how would they report this to the big fry? Zixiong, next time, be more nimble. There's no need to make your movements too big. That will reduce your efficiency. If this was a true life and death battle, this habit of yours will cause you to lose your life. But overall, your display was still acceptable. Long Chen smiled slightly. Although Su Zixiong was still lacking immensely compared to Qiyu, his improvement was good. With how long Long Chen had been with Wild, he was profoundly aware that the bloodline of the barbarian race affected their intelligence. Hence, for Su Zixiong to have made this much progress was quite good. Su Zixiong was very pleased to hear Long Chen's approval. In this group of people, he was the weakest. He had always had a slight fear that Long Chen would drive him away one day. So even though he was a bit foolish, he still worked as hard as he could. Furthermore, whether it was Qin Feng or Qiyu, they always taught him seriously. Hence, he was very moved by this, and he also cherished this opportunity to learn from all of them. Because of this, obtaining Long Chen's approval made him so emotional that he couldn't even speak. Qin Feng then waved him over, and they began to separate the corpses of the two devil beasts. 2 cores then entered their pockets. This was a large sum of money. It was their first time seeing cores at the level of an immortal king. The cores were so large that they were like hills. Spatial runes were stuck to them, and they shrank to the size of a fist. Holding those cores, they felt an awe-inspiring destructive power. 1 wind element core and 1 earth element core. In the academy, they can be traded for countless resources. Baihe looked at the 2 cores and sighed in admiration. Their luck really had been excellent this time. These kinds of cores are normally used to forge king items or embedded into king items to increase their power. Regretfully, they aren't that useful to us. Extracting the wind and earth element energies for cultivation requires a large amount of manpower. We don't have that time. We'll have to see if we can trade them for something useful, said Long Chen, putting them away. Although cores were treasures, they weren't that valuable to Long Chen. It was too bad that Guoran and Xiachen weren't here. Otherwise, whether they were used for forging or setting up formations, those cores could be very useful. Moreover, Qinglong and the others had to spend a great deal of effort to strip the hide off of the python. If it weren't for Long Chen's bone saber, they wouldn't have been able to break its defenses. Long Chen planned to use the hide to create armor for everyone. This kind of armor was so tough that even without runes, treasure items couldn't break it. After taking out the cores and the snakeskin, Long Chen tossed the corpses into the primal chaos space's black soil. Life energy then bloomed, and the wood foundation divine trees rapidly grew. Just 2 corpses provided even more energy than all the sea demon corpses he had gathered from the Luo family. The wood foundation divine trees continued to grow thicker and thicker. They were already 300 meters thick. The bark also had a pattern similar to dragon scales, and the quality of the wood had increased. Even the thinnest branch was as tough as iron. As expected, devil beasts that have reached the immortal king level have far more energy. I wonder if I can get some more. Long Chen was delighted to see them grow so crazily. But after thinking about it, he found that this wasn't very realistic. The corpses of devil beasts that had reached this level were all valuable treasures. The cores, hides, flesh, blood, bones, tendons, etc. They were all treasures. People would always split the corpses on this level into its parts. Some didn't even waste a single strand of their fur. They could turn the fur into blankets as luxury products, or use it as a display of status and position. Thus, the chances of him buying fresh and complete corpses on this level were very low. Even if there were some on the market, he would be taken for slaughter by the sellers. After dealing with the corpses, Long Chen finally walked over to that ringleader from the Azure Dragon gang. He kicked him in the coccyx. Ah! The ringleader finally managed to make a sound, and it was a miserable scream like a pig being slaughtered. It was truly hair-raising. Shut up. I have a few questions for you. If you dare to conceal anything from me, I'll do the same thing until you die from the pain. Long Chen sat on a rock, crossed his legs, and nibbled on a stalk of grass indifferently. Upon seeing this, that person's screams stopped as if severed by a knife. He was absolutely terrified now. Just then, he felt like he had been dropped into boiling lava filled with blades. His soul and flesh felt like they were being burned and cut at the same time. He had never experienced that kind of pain. Most terrifying of all, this pain didn't allow him to pass out. It came through exceptionally clearly, and every breath felt like 100 years of agony. He was absolutely terrified of this seemingly innocent young man in front of him. This young man was a devil. Tell me, what kind of status do you have in the Azure Dragon Gang? Asked Long Chen. This lowly one is the Azure Dragon Gang's manager. His voice was hoarse and it quivered. Manager? Then who is your boss? What cultivation base do they have? Asked Long Chen. Our master is Zhao Qinglong. He is an immortal king. The Azure Dragon Gang was founded based on his name. He created it, that person answered hastily. Then let's go. Bring me to your master. Let's see if your Azure Dragon Gang is recruiting others. I also want to try being a gang leader for some fun. Long Chen smiled mischievously. Just like that, he brought that person along deeper into the vile dragon domain. The manager of the Azure Dragon Gang explained what he knew about the Vile Dragon domain. There were 4 major forces here, and the Azure Dragon Gang was one of them. Both the boss and the vice boss were immortal kings. And coincidentally, this vice boss was actually a traitor who was expelled from the High Firmament Academy 1300 years ago. Chen was a bit surprised that the academy hadn't mentioned this to him. A traitor had actually managed to rise to the immortal king realm? That was a bit strange. According to reason, anyone who could ascend to the immortal king realm had to be very talented, such as an outstanding primal. They were elites amongst elites. How could the High Firmament Academy expel such a person? He really was unable to see through the High Firmament Academy. Furthermore, after encountering immortal kings one after another, he found something odd. The immortal kings that he had seen didn't give him a feeling of too much pressure. On the other hand, Baihe Tong and his wives all gave him a mightier sense of pressure. On the surface, they only had the power of divine lords. But the 9-star hegemon body art senses were always amazingly accurate. Due to this, he had a feeling that Baihe Tong and the others were likely sealing their true power. It seemed that the High Firmament Academy's power truly wasn't something that he could imagine. The title of the world's #1 academy was not for nothing. From the manager, Chen learned that this traitor's name was Jiang. He was given the moniker of the Little Spirit King because he was a rarely seen spirit cultivator, and his flying sword controlling art had reached perfection. The Azure Dragon Gang had the Little Spirit King Jiang and the Dragon Claw Zhao Qinglong. They were both famous existences in the Vile Dragon domain. The Azure Dragon Gang had 2 immortal kings standing guard over it, and its gang contained 1 million members. Yet, with so many experts, they were not powerful enough to dominate the Vile Dragon domain. They were only one of the 4 major forces. The other 3 were the Blood Drinking Alliance, Dragon Slaughter Guild, and the Iron Blood Mercenary Group. These 4 powers constantly fought each other, but their powers were evenly matched, so no side was able to get an advantage over the others. Amongst these 4 powers, the Azure Dragon Gang and the Dragon Slaughtering Guild were mortal enemies. Of course, just from their names, it could be seen that these 2 factions were opposing each other. In every encounter, they would almost instantly start killing each other with no room for talking. When it came to disciples like Chen and the others who came from outside the domain, they were usually from rich families and had come out to adventure. As they had quite a few protective treasures, they were viewed as sheep for the slaughter by these people. So, killing them for their treasures was often seen here. As for poor disciples that came here, they were usually forced by their enemies to flee here or had to risk their lives here in a gamble to get stronger. If those disciples had decent aptitude and guts, the 4 powers would take them in to strengthen themselves. As a result, the Vile Dragon domain had gathered a bunch of ruthless figures. Although their cultivation bases weren't incredibly high, they would make sure no kind people existed in this place. The other 3 powers also had immortal kings standing guard over them, and not just one. In other domains, such figures would be enough to be sect masters. But they lived in the shadows here. It was said that these people all possessed secret backgrounds. According to the manager, the Little Spirit King Jiang had done something taboo, which was why he was chased out of the High Firmament Academy and fled here. As for the boss, Zhao Qinglong, he had once been the master of a sect. Due to offending the Bloodkill Hall, the Bloodkill Hall annihilated his sect overnight, and he fled here, no longer daring to leave. It was said that the violent aura here had a large effect on assassins. The Bloodkill Hall's assassins wouldn't stay here for a long period. That was something that Chen understood. Assassins focused on cultivating their concealing arts, so they had techniques to slow the flow of their blood and lower their temperature, which allowed them to conceal themselves and keep their heads cool. This was where the term cold-blooded assassins came from. As for the Vile Dragon domain's violent aura, it not only affected their blood chi but also their mind. That was why they didn't set foot in this domain. Zhao Qinglong was definitely the safest here. The most interesting thing about these 4 powers was that their headquarters were actually in the same place. That was because within the Vile Dragon domain, the safest area was Zhaoming Ancient City. It was said that this was a remnant of an ancient city. Although its original buildings had long since crumbled, for some reason, the devil beasts did not dare to enter the ruins of that area. They didn't even dare to get close. Even if people provoked immortal king devil beasts, as soon as they fled into the area around Zhaoming Ancient City, those devil beasts would stop and silently leave. Zhaoming Ancient City was split into 4 regions: north, south, east, and west. Those 4 regions were each occupied by one of the 4 major powers. The 4 powers all respected one rule: no matter their enmity and grudges, they would not fight within the city. That was because they didn't know what was causing the devil beasts to be scared of the city. If the city was damaged in battle and whatever scared them away was broken, the devil beasts could invade and everyone would die. Thus, at the very least, Zhaoming City could be counted as a somewhat safe place. People didn't dare to fight there because no one wanted to be killed. On the way there, Baihe caught a storm eagle. He then made it fly at full speed for a full day and night, driving it to the point where it almost spat out blood. But thanks to it, they finally saw the figure of an ancient city ahead. As expected, when they saw that ancient city, the storm eagle that Baihe had caught no longer dared to go any further. Even if it was beaten to death, it refused to go further. Baihe could not force it. Due to it having carried them all this way, Baihe simply released it. While carrying the sullen manager of the Azure Dragon gang, they continued onward. But as they went further, the trees grew sparser and the land grew flatter. Through a grassy underbrush, they could vaguely see some bricks of the ancient era. Those bricks were covered in moss. They were simply lying there, as if trying to tell a story. Upon reaching the edge of the ancient city, Long Chen and the others felt an ineffable mourning feeling. Long Chen, Qinglong, and Qiyu came to a stop at the same time. They exchanged a glance, seeing the shock in the other's eyes. They had experienced this feeling before. It was the feeling that they had felt on the martial heaven continent when Chu Jiang, the old man, Ling Yunzi, Hu Feng, and the others fell one by one. It was that feeling of powerlessness, that will to only fight to death, and the sorrow of eternal rest. It seems that this really is an ancient city with its own story, sighed Long Chen as he looked at these ruins. Who's there? Long Chen and the others had just appeared when they heard a shout from up ahead. Boss Long San has honored us with his presence. Call out the boss of your Azure Dragon gang to come kowtow in greeting. Before Long Chen could reply, Baihe was already shouting impatiently. As a result, countless figures came out from all over the ruins. How brazen! Juniors, did you come from so far away just to die? A cold snort rang out. After that, a vast aura rose, and a group of people walked over. Favorite. Long Chen saw the boss of the Azure Dragon gang, Zhao Qinglong. He wasn't tall, but he was exceptionally well-built and there was a long scar covering half of his face. A piece of his cheekbone was also missing. It was said that this scar was left by an assassin from the Bloodkill Hall. At that time, the dagger had been aiming to kill him, but he had managed to dodge. His appearance had already been a bit sinister-looking before that assassination attempt. Now with this scar, he was positively ominous. His eyes were like those of a bloodthirsty beast, and killing intent filled every part of him. It had sunk deep into his bones and soul, giving people the feeling of a merciless, murderous beast. Beside Zhao Qinglong was a tall middle-aged man with a sword on his back. His face was much better looking. This person was the vice leader of the Azure Dragon gang, also the traitor who was expelled from the High Firmament Academy, the Little Spirit King Qinglong. When standing beside Zhao Qinglong, this deputy was much easier to look at. However, when Long Chen looked at him, he found him to be worse. In his eyes, Long Chen saw a twisted, warped soul. Behind the two of them were thousands of experts, all of them divine lords. It went without saying that such a group would definitely be a supreme sect in another domain. These people all had violence in their natures. It could be that their auras had been infected by the aura of this place, or they were simply this bloodthirsty from the get-go. The small fry that had escaped from the slaughter last time clearly managed to send word back to the Azure Dragon gang, so they knew that Long Chen and the others were coming. Qinglong then kicked the manager in the butt, sending him tumbling to the front of Zhao Qinglong. Your mission has been completed. We said that as long as you led the way, we'd spare your dog life. We've fulfilled our promise, said Long Chen indifferently. The High Firmament Academy's people? Jiang narrowed his eyes as he eyed Baishe and Baishao's robes. A touch of sinister light appeared in his eyes. That's right. I am the Dean of the High Firmament Academy's 7th branch. I've come here to clean up the sect, so I'll be taking your dog life. I like to do things directly, so what do you think? Do you want to cut off your own head and give it to me, or are you going to make me personally take it? After Baishe took out a chair, Long Chen plopped himself on it and crossed his eyes, looking at Jiang indifferently. Haha. Jiang laughed, his voice full of disdain. It was as if he had heard the world's funniest joke. The 7th Branch Academy? The Dean? Are you trying to make me laugh to death? The High Firmament Academy's branches have long since become history. The High Firmament Academy has already declined and is on the verge of collapse. Now, you actually call yourself the Dean of a branch academy that was destroyed tens of millions of years ago? Are you an idiot? Tens of millions of years? Has it been so long? Long Chen was surprised. He really hadn't known that the branch academies had been destroyed so long ago. You don't even know this history yet claim to be the Dean? Truly courting death dash, sneered Jiang. Just as he sneered, his vision darkened as Long Chen's hand had struck his face. Who told you to laugh? I am the Dean. Do you have a fucking opinion on that? The two sides were less than 300 meters apart, and they were just chatting. Hence, no one had expected the seated Long Chen to suddenly attack. As a result, Jiang was sent flying like a spinning top, and his blood sprayed along with a dozen teeth. He was sent so far that he smashed into the large group of people at the rear. They then coughed up blood, their appearances truly wretched. It happened all too suddenly. The vice boss of the Azure Dragon Gang, a grand immortal king, was slapped in the face in front of everyone. Even Zhao Qinglong jumped in shock. By the time he reacted, Long Chen had returned to his seat as if nothing had happened. You. Zhao Qinglong had originally not placed Long Chen and the others in his eyes. He had been debating himself whether or not this was some sinister scheme from the Dragon Slaughtering Guild. As a result though, when Long Chen made his move, his expression instantly changed. Even with his cultivation base, he was unable to see through Long Chen's movements. If just now it hadn't been a slap but had been a saber or sword, would Jiang still have his life? However, in truth he had overestimated Long Chen. Long Chen's face-slapping technique's principle was based on lacking any killing intent. It could not be a killing blow. But if he was close enough, he could strike before others could even react. If it was a weapon or an attack containing more than just simple physical power, the very thought of doing such a thing would naturally produce killing intent. When the other side sensed the mortal danger, they would automatically react. So slapping people was alright, but killing people wasn't. It was simply because outsiders were unable to comprehend that instantly. They simply thought that if Long Chen could slap them, he could also kill them as he pleased. It went without saying that this move of Long Chen truly had many uses. Jiang crawled up and spat out blood. When people saw him, they cried out in shock. Jiang's head was now deformed and there was a clear handprint on his face. It was astonishing. Long Chen's slap had almost shattered his head. I didn't expect a spirit cultivator to have such a weak body. Even Long Chen was surprised. Just now, if he had just used just a bit more power, perhaps he would have directly killed Jiang. Courting death. Jiang circulated his power, healing his wounds. As his face twisted, a venomous light filled his eyes. He then slammed his hands together in front of him and prepared hand seals. Stop! Zhao Qinglong shouted and turned to Long Chen. Friend, just who are you? Why are you targeting us? You're still young, so don't get used by others. You'll regret it in the end. Considering that Zhao Qinglong was the leader of such a powerful force, he couldn't possibly just be a fighter. He felt that Long Chen's arrival was too sudden. There might be some scheme behind it. Furthermore, considering that they dared to enter the vile dragon domain at such an age and were still able to maintain their calm in front of so many experts showed that they were extraordinary. There was no way to fake the calm and indifference in their eyes. That was the confidence of true experts. That kind of thing was completely different from the fools who rushed in. He had no choice but to be cautious. Who would be using them? Zhao Qinglong, the longer you live, the more useless and cowardly you are. Do you think that junior brother is being used by me to come find trouble for you? Just then, a sweet and soft voice rang out. A slender woman with dual hook weapons on her back appeared in the air, looking disdainfully at Zhao Qinglong. When Long Chen saw that woman, he smiled slightly. Based on her appearance, he knew her status. This woman looked to be around 30 and wore skin-tight leather with half her chest exposed, giving people a panoramic view of 2 snow-white mountains and a mountain valley. She possessed the grace of a mature woman, to the point that people almost wished to take a juicy bite of those honey peaches. Her eyes seemed to draw people's souls in. However, this extremely alluring woman was a vicious figure. She was the leader of one of the 4 major powers in the vile dragon domain, the Dragon Slaughtering Guild. Yet, she went by the sweet name of Jiang Yuhua. The lotus within the rain swayed ever so gently. Its beauty was moving. However, this lotus was not so tender. There were poisonous thorns beneath its leaves, and its poison was lethal. Considering that she had created her own power within the vile dragon domain, and even after being mortal enemies with the Azure Dragon Gang she was still living well, it could be seen that this woman was not simple. She was also an immortal king, and her aura even felt a bit stronger than Zhao Qinglong's. Right now, there was another immortal king behind her along with 2 half-step immortal kings. The Azure Dragon Gang's experts tensed up as soon as they saw her. All of them were ready to fight. Although they all followed the unwritten rule of not fighting within this remnant of the ancient city, no one entrusted their lives to this rule. Junior brother, are you here to find trouble for the Azure Dragon Gang? If so, big sister supports you. Jiang Yuhua smiled at Long Chen sweetly. How will you support me? Will you help me destroy the Azure Dragon Gang? Asked Long Chen, smiling with just as much sincerity. Oh, do you need big sister's help to destroy the Azure Dragon Gang? I feel like there's entirely no need. Why don't you simply kill those 2 and take over the Azure Dragon Gang? You can be the leader then, and big sister will warm your bed for you. Then you would be in control of 2 major forces. Doesn't that sound good? Jiang Yuhua winked at Long Chen. It went without saying that her skill wasn't bad. In addition to her fiery build, she was full of ripened charm that would move any man. She was capable of drawing out a man's most primitive desire. However, just who was Long Chen? Which one of his women wasn't a peerless beauty capable of causing the downfall of a nation? Hence, Long Chen was almost immune to this kind of woman. He simply smiled at Jiang Yuhua. He knew that she schemed deeply. She was using this method to probe him. Just as he was about to reply, he felt a slight pain in his waist. Seeing Long Chen and Jiang Yuhua practically flirting with their eyes, Baihe reached out and pinched him. Long Chen was instantly made speechless. Seeing that small action of Baihe's, Jiang Yuhua laughed. Little sister, this is no good. Men should be wild and uncontrollable. Even if they have a heavenly fairy waiting for them at home, they still want to taste wild game. Furthermore, I only mentioned warming his bed, not marrying him. Why are you getting so emotional? Shut up. Who is emotional? Baihe frostily glared at this woman. She was merely dissatisfied with Long Chen staring at this woman for so long and had disciplined him. Hence, for this woman to speak so bluntly, Baihe's face almost reddened. Then I'll keep my mouth shut. Big sister was just joking with you. In any case, if you need help, then go ahead and ask. Jiang Yuhua laughed, not angry at all. She then simply stood there, seemingly intent on just watching. At this moment, Long Chen could almost sense other experts secretly watching from a distance. The other 2 major forces were probably lurking in the dark. But they didn't have great enmity with the Azure Dragon Gang, so they didn't come out directly like the Dragon Slaughtering Guild. Zhao Qinglong's expression sank. He didn't know Long Chen's origins, but based on Jiang Yuha's tone, the 2 were not acquainted. That made him feel a bit better. Since no one is acquainted, Why would you come here to provoke my Azure Dragon gang? There must be a reason, right? Demanded Zhao Qinglong. Long Chen smiled. A reason? Why do you want a reason? I came to the Vile Dragon domain to do something big. I am going to restore the 7th Branch Academy. But I don't know where it is, so I came to this city to find a few knowledgeable people. And coincidentally, some small fries from your Azure Dragon gang offended me, so I came here. Then even more coincidentally, I encountered a traitor of my High Firmament Academy. I feel like this is a good chance to make my name here and shake all of you. By slaughtering Qiao, I can clean up my sect, as well as kill the chicken to warn the monkeys. It is 2 goals with 1 move, 2 birds with 1 stone, 2 prey with 1 arrow. Ignorant brat, you are courting death. Qiao roared. Long Chen's tone was exceedingly arrogant. He actually turned Qiao into a tool for his own fame, and that was unacceptable for Qiao. We can discuss whether or not I'm courting death later. First of all, don't interrupt me. Let me finish. I know that some others are watching in the distance. I will not beat around the bush. Now that I'm here, you'll have to listen to me in the future, said Long Chen calmly. Hearing this, Zhao Qinglong laughed furiously. In all his years, he had never seen someone so arrogant. Today, his eyes had been opened to the world. Listen to you? Based on what? Zhao Qinglong's expression was disdainful. He was afraid of the power behind Long Chen, but based on Long Chen's arrogant words, it didn't seem that he had other experts backing him. Is your head full of shit? This is the Vile Dragon domain. Everyone here talks with their fists. Why ask what this is based on? Long Chen eyed Zhao Qinglong like he was an idiot. He then looked at the gloomy Qiao, who was erupting with killing intent. Oh, youngster, if I personally attacked you, it would be bullying you. Even if I killed you, you wouldn't accept your defeat. In order to let you die fully convinced, I'll pick someone else for you. As long as you can endure 10 exchanges against her, I'll spare your dog life. Long Chen then turned to Baihe, and she immediately walked out very obediently. She coldly looked at Qiao. I've heard of your name. You killed fellow disciples while gaining experience in a secret realm to take their treasures. The academy then announced a kill order for you but didn't expect you to run here. Today, I will represent the academy in cleaning up the sect. Although Long Chen had read quite a bit in the academy, when it came to the history of the academy, especially history that was kept secret, Baihe knew more than him. Thus, as soon as she had learned Qiao identity, she made the decision to kill him. Haha. Qiao laughed. Ripples spread from his body, and a terrifying aura was unleashed. A group of idiots who don't know how high the heavens are. Today, I'll show you that you're nothing more than frogs at the bottom of a well. As Qiao formed hand seals, the sword on his back flew out. At the same time, endless swords appeared in the air, forming an endless sea of swords. All those swords were pointed at Baihe, their sharp auras slicing through the void. Baihe then looked at Qiao frostily and slowly reached for the hilt of her sword. When a golden mark appeared in her eyes, a chilling killing intent erupted. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.